What if everything we think we know about history is wrong? Hidden beneath the Earth's surface and tucked away in forgotten ruins lie secrets so baffling that even the brightest minds in science can't unravel them. Picture this: an ancient artifact that defies the technology of its time, a skeleton that shouldn't exist, or a structure built with precision so advanced it challenges our understanding of human capability. These aren't plot twists from a sci-fi novel. They're real discoveries that archaeologists have stumbled upon, leaving experts scratching their heads and rewriting textbooks. For centuries, we've relied on science to decode the past, but what happens when the past refuses to make sense? Today, we're diving headfirst into 50 of the most jaw-dropping, spine-tingling mysteries that archaeology has ever uncovered. Finds so perplexing they've left researchers debating, doubting, and sometimes even dismissing the impossible. From metallic objects embedded in million-year-old rock to underground cities that defy logic, these aren't just anomalies, they're glaring question marks etched into the fabric of history. And the most thrilling part, no matter how hard we try, some of these enigmas simply refuse to be solved. So why does this matter to you? Because history isn't just a story of the past. It's a mirror reflecting who we are, where we came from, and what might still be out there waiting to be found. Every unexplained artifact, every impossible skeleton whispers a tantalizing possibility that there's so much more to our world than we've been taught. Ready to step into the shadows of the unknown, to question what you thought was certain? Then buckle up, because we're about to embark on a journey through 50 discoveries that science still can't explain, and by the end, you might just see history in a whole new light. Buried beneath the waves for over 2,000 years, the Antikythera Mechanism emerged from a shipwreck off the coast of Greece as one of history's most mind-bending puzzles. Discovered by sponge divers in 1901, this intricate bronze device, roughly the size of a shoebox, contains a labyrinth of interlocking gears so precise it wouldn't look out of place in a 19th-century clockmaker's workshop. Yet carbon dating places it somewhere between 150 and 100 BCE, a time when such advanced engineering was thought to be impossible. The mechanism's purpose, that's where things get even wilder. Imagine a handheld cosmos capable of predicting celestial events like eclipses decades in advance, tracking the cycles of the moon, and even modeling the irregular orbits of planets, all with nothing but hand-cranked gears and dials. Some researchers call it an ancient Greek supercomputer, a tool for philosophers and sailors alike to navigate both the stars and the seas. Others argue it might have been used for astrology, mapping out auspicious dates for rituals or agricultural cycles. But here's the real kicker: no other artifact like it has ever been found. If this technology existed, why didn't it spread? Why are there no mentions of such devices in historical texts? The Antikythera Mechanism stands alone, a glitch in the timeline that forces us to question everything we thought we knew about ancient innovation. Was it a one-off masterpiece, the work of a forgotten genius, or could there have been others lost to time, waiting to rewrite history? For decades, the Antikythera Mechanism sat in museum storage, its secrets locked inside layers of corroded bronze until modern technology tore down those walls. When researchers finally subjected the device to high-resolution X-ray tomography, the scans revealed something astonishing: tiny, meticulously engraved Greek letters hidden beneath centuries of grime. These weren't random markings, they formed a detailed user manual, labeling dials for solar and lunar cycles, planetary positions, and even upcoming athletic games like the Olympics. Yet the more we decoded, the more questions arose. Who crafted this masterpiece? The inscriptions suggest it might have hailed from the workshop of Archimedes or a follower of his school, thinkers known for pushing boundaries. But here's the twist: the mechanism's gearwork surpasses anything attributed to them in surviving texts. The level of miniaturization, the differential gear, a component not officially invented until the 16th century, the sheer complexity. It's as if someone dropped a pocket watch into ancient Greece. And that's the heart of the mystery. If this technology was so advanced, why didn't it spark an industrial revolution 2,000 years early? Why do we find no records, no imitations, no trace of its influence? The likely answer is as humbling as it is thrilling. We've only scratched the surface of antiquity's lost innovations. Perhaps the Antikythera Mechanism wasn't unique, just the lone survivor of a tradition wiped out by war, disaster, or simply time. Every gear whispers a tantalizing truth. History's dark ages might have been far brighter than we dare imagine. Now imagine holding a book so enigmatic that even the world's top cryptographers and linguists have thrown up their hands in defeat. The Voynich Manuscript, a 200-page relic from the 15th century, isn't just written in an unknown language. It's a linguistic ghost, a cipher that has resisted every attempt at decoding for over 600 years. Its pages are filled with looping, alien-looking script flowing beside illustrations of plants that don't exist, astrological charts with unfamiliar constellations, and naked women bathing in what appears to be a network of interconnected green pools. Is it an elaborate medieval prank, a lost scientific treatise, or something far stranger? The manuscript first surfaced in the court of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, who allegedly purchased it for 600 gold ducats, enough to buy a small castle at the time. Since then, it's passed through the hands of alchemists, scholars, and even World War II codebreakers, all convinced they could crack its secrets. Modern carbon dating confirms the vellum pages are genuine, ruling out a later forgery, while the ink and pigments match 15th century materials. But here's what makes it truly bizarre. Statistical analysis reveals the text follows linguistic patterns found in real languages, with word frequencies and sentence structures that suggest meaning, not gibberish. Yet not a single word has ever been definitively translated. Theories about its origins range from the plausible to the fantastical. Some argue it's a coded herbal manual by a medieval healer, its plants distorted to protect trade secrets. Others believe it's the work of a lone genius experimenting with an artificial language centuries before such ideas became fashionable. Then there are the fringe hypotheses that it's a message from Atlantis, extraterrestrial communication, or even a glimpse into a parallel dimension. But the most haunting possibility that it's written in a real but utterly lost language, one spoken by a culture erased from history without a trace. What keeps scholars up at night isn't just the mystery of the text itself, but the unsettling realization that human knowledge has gaps we might never bridge. In an age where we can decode ancient DNA and reconstruct lost cities from satellite imagery, the Voynich Manuscript remains a humbling reminder. Some doors to the past may stay locked forever. And perhaps that's the most thrilling part. Not the answers we've found, but the questions that keep us searching. Turn to any page of the Voynich Manuscript, and you'll find yourself staring at plants that defy reality, vivid, twisting roots, leaves with impossible serrations, and blossoms that look like they belong on another planet. Over 300 illustrations fill its pages, each meticulously detailed yet utterly unrecognizable. Botanists have spent decades comparing them to every known species, from common herbs to deep jungle flora, and yet not a single one matches anything in the historical or modern record. Are these fantastical creations of the artist's imagination, or could they be snapshots of a lost world? The debate splits scholars into two camps. Some argue the plants are purely symbolic, their bizarre features encoding alchemical formulas or religious allegories. The looping roots might represent spiritual pathways, the spiraling stems celestial cycles, a visual language meant to convey ideas, not reality. Others point to the manuscript's precise shading and anatomical detail, insisting these must be real plants, either extinct today or so rare they've vanished from human knowledge. There's a haunting possibility here. Entire species may have existed and disappeared without leaving a trace in the fossil record, their only remnant tucked inside this cryptic book. Then there's the third, even wilder theory, that the plants aren't from Earth at all. A handful of illustrations show what appear to be tubes or vessels connecting roots to leaves, almost like a rudimentary plumbing system. Could these be imagined hybrids of technology and biology, or did the author glimpse something beyond medieval understanding, the most convincing argument against pure fantasy? The consistency, unlike typical mythical herbals which exaggerate known plants, think mandrakes screaming when uprooted, Voynich's specimens follow internal logic. Similar structures repeat across pages, suggesting an underlying system, whether scientific or invented. Perhaps the most chilling clue lies in one tiny detail. A few plants bear faint resemblance to species from the Americas, like sunflowers or peppers. But here's the catch: the manuscript predates Columbus's voyages by decades. If these are real, how did the author know? The answer might rewrite history, proving transatlantic contact centuries earlier than we thought. Or it might prove nothing at all, leaving us with a gallery of ghosts, plants that never were, or once were, and are no more. Either way, the manuscript's pages bloom with questions, each more intoxicating than the last. In a dusty corner of the National Museum of Iraq sits a collection of unassuming clay jars, each no taller than a coffee mug. Found in 1936 near Baghdad, these 2,000-year-old artifacts might hold one of antiquity's most shocking secrets: the world's first batteries. Known as the Baghdad Batteries, these terracotta vessels contain copper cylinders housing iron rods, all sealed with an asphalt plug. At first glance, they could pass for ancient storage containers until you realize they bear an uncanny resemblance to a basic electrochemical cell. The theory goes like this: fill the jar with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, and the interaction between the copper and iron could generate a small electrical charge enough to produce a faint but measurable current. In the 1970s, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig replicated the setup and confirmed it could deliver around 1 volt of electricity. That's not enough to power a light bulb, but it might have been sufficient for electroplating jewelry or creating subtle tingling sensations in religious rituals. Imagine priests using these devices to magically gild sacred objects or produce mysterious shocks during ceremonies, leaving worshippers convinced of divine intervention. Yet mainstream archaeology remains deeply skeptical. For one, no wires or conductors have ever been found alongside the jars, leaving their intended function open to debate. Critics argue they might simply have been storage for sacred scrolls, with the iron and copper acting as corrosion-resistant seals. Even more damning, there's no mention of electricity in Mesopotamian texts, no illustrations of their use, and no other artifacts suggesting widespread knowledge of such technology. If these were batteries, why didn't the knowledge spread? Why no evolution of the design over centuries? Here's where the mystery thickens. Some researchers point to a handful of gilded artifacts from the same era, speculating they might have been electroplated, a process requiring electricity. But without direct evidence linking these objects to the jars, the theory remains tantalizingly out of reach. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, not a utilitarian battery as we know it, but an accidental discovery, a fleeting glimpse of a phenomenon the ancients didn't fully understand. The Baghdad Batteries force us to confront a humbling possibility. Innovation isn't always linear. A civilization might stumble upon a breakthrough only to lose it to time, leaving behind fragments that whisper of forgotten potential. Whether they're proof of ancient electrical experimentation or just cleverly sealed containers, one thing's certain: they challenge our assumptions about what the past was capable of and what secrets might still be buried in the sands. The Baghdad Batteries might not have powered ancient gadgets, but what if their true purpose was far more mystical? Picture this: a priest in a dimly lit temple, pouring sacred liquid into one of these vessels during a ceremony. The faint electric current produced could have made metal idols vibrate or emitted a subtle glow tricks designed to dazzle worshippers into believing in divine intervention. Some researchers speculate these jars might have been used in electrotherapy, with the mild shock interpreted as healing energy from the gods. Ancient texts from the region describe rituals involving divine sparks, which could have been early encounters with static electricity or something more intentional. Then there's the electroplating theory. A handful of gilded artifacts from the same era show traces of gold applied too thinly for traditional hammering methods, suggesting they might have been electrically plated. Imagine craftsmen dipping jewelry into a gold-infused solution, using these primitive batteries to bond the metal centuries before modern science rediscovered the technique. But here's the catch: no residue of such solutions has ever been found inside the jars, and no tools to complete the circuit have surfaced. Without wires or connectors, the electroplating idea remains a tantalizing what if. Skeptics counter with a simpler explanation. These were just secure containers for sacred texts. The asphalt seal would have kept moisture out, preserving scrolls or relics, while the copper and iron acted as corrosion-resistant barriers. After all, Mesopotamian cultures prized written knowledge, storing everything from medical recipes to star charts in similar vessels. Yet even this theory has holes. Why the elaborate inner metalwork for simple storage? Why the acidic residue found in some jars? The real enigma isn't just the object's function, but the silence around it. If these were batteries, why no mentions in hymns, trade records, or inventors' boasts? Most ancient breakthroughs, from Roman concrete to Greek fire, were celebrated, imitated, and improved upon. The Baghdad Batteries stand alone, a ghost of possibility. Whether they were forgotten technology, ritual tools, or something entirely different, their legacy challenges our timeline of innovation. Perhaps their greatest lesson is this: history isn't a straight line of progress, but a labyrinth of dead ends and lost genius. And somewhere in that maze, truth waits, still charged, still undiscovered. From above the parched plains of southern Peru, the desert floor transforms into an open-air gallery of wonders. The Nazca lines, etched into the earth between 500 BC and 500 CE, sprawl across nearly 200 square miles in shapes so vast they can only be fully appreciated from the sky. Hundreds of these geoglyphs stretch across the landscape: a hummingbird with wings spanning 300 feet, a spider with perfectly proportioned legs, a monkey with a spiraling tail, each rendered with a precision that defies their ancient origins. How could a culture without aerial technology create such massive, flawless designs? And why go through such effort for art that's invisible from the ground? The most striking feature of these lines isn't just their scale, but their mathematical perfection. The straightest among them run for miles without deviating more than a few feet, a feat requiring advanced surveying techniques. Curves and animal figures maintain anatomical accuracy down to the number of toes on a lizard or the bend of a whale's tail. Archaeologists believe the Nazca people might have used simple tools and grids to scale up small models, but even that explanation leaves gaps. Without a high vantage point, how did they correct for distortions? Some theorize they might have built rudimentary hot air balloons for oversight, though no evidence of such technology has ever been found. Then there's the question of purpose. One prevailing theory suggests the lines served as sacred pathways for ritual processions, their straightness guiding pilgrims toward ceremonial sites. Others argue they were astronomical calendars, aligning with solstices or constellations to mark planting seasons. The most controversial idea, that they were landing strips or signals for extraterrestrial visitors, a notion fueled by their resemblance to modern runways when viewed from altitude. But here's the catch: the line's shallow depth, just inches deep, and fragile composition make them utterly unsuitable for any kind of physical traffic, earthly or otherwise. Perhaps most baffling is the environmental context. The Nazca Desert is one of the driest places on Earth, with winds too weak to erase the lines over centuries. This preservation feels almost purposeful, as if the creators chose this canvas knowing their work would endure. Yet the very climate that saved the lines also obscures their meaning. With no written records from the Nazca culture, we're left interpreting whispers in the sand. Recent discoveries have only deepened the mystery. In 2019, drones revealed over 150 previously unknown geoglyphs, including humanoid figures and surreal, abstract patterns. Some of these newer finds appear older than the famous animal designs, suggesting the tradition evolved over generations. Were later glyphs refinements of an ancient practice, or did their purpose shift over time? The Nazca lines resist easy explanation because they're not one puzzle but many, a fusion of art, engineering, and spirituality that transcends modern categories. They challenge us to rethink what ancient people valued, what they deemed worth laboring over for centuries without a tangible reward. In a world obsessed with utility, these desert etchings ask a provocative question. What if the point wasn't to be used, but to be seen not by humans, but by gods, ancestors, or even the cosmos itself? Every line, every curve is a testament to humanity's endless drive to leave a mark, to say, we were here, even if the message outlasts its meaning. Among the vast sprawl of the Nazca lines, certain geoglyphs seem to reach beyond the earth, pointing directly to the heavens. Some of the longest straight lines align precisely with the sun's position during the winter and summer solstices, while others mirror key constellations visible in the Peruvian night sky 2,000 years ago. The famous arrow glyph, stretching over 5 miles, points unerringly toward the spot where the sun sets on the June solstice, a celestial event marking the start of the agricultural cycle in ancient Andean cultures. Meanwhile, the massive spider figure eerily mirrors the star pattern of Orion, a constellation long associated with rain and fertility in Nazca mythology. These alignments can't be coincidence, but what exactly were the Nazca trying to communicate to the cosmos? Diving deeper into the astronomical theory reveals both brilliance and frustration. The Nazca people, like many ancient cultures, relied on celestial cues to time planting, harvests, and rituals. Creating massive, immovable markers on the ground would have functioned like a colossal calendar, ensuring entire communities could synchronize with nature's rhythms. Some researchers suggest the lines acted as a kind of observatory, where priests or astronomers walked the paths during key dates, using the glyphs to predict eclipses or seasonal changes. But here's the twist: not all lines fit this pattern. While some clearly track astronomical events, others meander without obvious celestial correlation, leaving scholars to wonder if the Nazca blended practical astronomy with deeper spiritual symbolism. The debate intensifies when we consider the Nazca's worldview. For them, the desert wasn't just a canvas, it was a sacred interface between earth and sky. Water, desperately scarce in the region, was believed to be controlled by deities residing in the stars. By etching constellations into the ground, the Nazca might have been performing a form of sympathetic magic, physically anchoring celestial power to ensure rain and fertile soil. This duality, practical calendar and ritual object, challenges modern distinctions between science and religion. To the Nazca, predicting solstices and appeasing gods may have been one and the same. Yet even the most compelling theories hit a wall: the complete absence of written records. Unlike the Maya or Egyptians, the Nazca left no star charts or inscriptions explaining their work. All we have are clues buried in pottery designs and burial artifacts, where recurring motifs of spiders, birds, and stars hint at a cosmology we've only glimpsed. Recent spectroscopic analysis of pigments used in Nazca ceramics reveals traces of meteoric iron, suggesting they might have venerated shooting stars or celestial phenomena lost to time. The most haunting possibility: that we're fundamentally misreading the line's purpose. What if their alignments weren't meant to observe the sky but to signal to it? Some indigenous oral traditions speak of ancestors who walked with the stars, implying a dialogue between earth and heavens. The Nazca lines could be prayers made visible, permanent invitations for gods or celestial beings to intervene in human affairs. As drones and satellite imaging uncover new geoglyphs, the mystery only deepens. A 2,000-year-old spiral discovered in 2021 aligns not with a single solstice, but with a complex 18-year lunar cycle. Such precision implies generations of accumulated knowledge, passed down through shamans or star priests whose names we'll never know. The more we map, the clearer it becomes. The Nazca didn't just watch the sky, they wove themselves into its fabric. And the lines endure not as dead monuments, but as unanswered questions etched into the earth, waiting for the right eyes to decipher their silent conversation with the stars. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis assembled one of the most perplexing documents in cartographic history, a map depicting coastlines no 16th-century sailor should have known. Crafted on gazelle skin and rediscovered in 1929 in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, this fragment shows the Atlantic's western edges with eerie precision. The bulging curve of Brazil, the jagged contours of the Caribbean, even portions of Antarctica's northern coast. But here's what sends chills down historians' spines. Antarctica appears free of ice, as it hasn't been for at least 6,000 years. How could a mapmaker from the age of galleys and compasses portray a continent humanity wouldn't officially discover for another 300 years? Piri Reis himself left clues in the map's margins, noting he'd synthesized data from 20 ancient source charts, including some dating back to Alexander the Great's era. He even referenced a controversial lost map used by Christopher Columbus, suggesting fragments of pre-Columbian knowledge might have survived in Ottoman archives. Modern analysis reveals even stranger details. The map's projection mimics aerial surveys, as if drawn from a vantage point high above the Earth, a technique supposedly invented millennia later. Certain coastal contours align suspiciously well with subglacial radar scans of Antarctica, hinting at knowledge of landmasses buried under miles of ice since the last ice age. Skeptics counter with a simpler explanation, coincidence mixed with creative license. They argue the Antarctica, labeled on the map, might actually be a distorted version of South America, its coastline bloated by errors common in early cartography. As for the ice-free detail, Piri Reis could have been filling gaps with speculation or copying mythical lands from ancient texts like Ptolemy's geography. After all, the map also includes fantastical creatures and mermaids, hardly markers of scientific rigor. But the most compelling twist comes from oceanography. Some of the map's anomalies, like the oddly placed islands off Antarctica, correspond to underwater mountain peaks that would have been above sea level when Antarctica was last ice-free. This raises a jaw-dropping possibility. Could Piri Reis have been copying charts from an advanced seafaring civilization predating recorded history? One that mapped the world before glaciers swallowed entire coasts. The enigma lingers because the map is both breathtakingly accurate and wildly wrong. It nails latitudes across continents yet mangles distances. It shows Antarctica's Queen Maud land in startling detail but omits the Drake Passage. This inconsistency fuels the debate: is it a palimpsest of forgotten genius or a lucky hodgepodge of educated guesses? Until we uncover those ancient sources Piri Reis cited, the map remains a tantalizing what-if, challenging us to reconsider how much knowledge has been lost to time and how much might still be hiding in plain sight. Piri Reis's handwritten notes on the map's margins offer a bombshell admission his work wasn't original, but a patchwork of far older sources. He credits 20 different charts, some allegedly dating back to the 4th century BC, including maps used by Columbus that supposedly guided him to the New World. But the most explosive claim, references to ancient source materials from the legendary Library of Alexandria, a repository of knowledge lost to fire over 1,000 years before his time. If true, this suggests Reis had access to cartographic secrets that predated even the Roman Empire, records that could have survived in Ottoman vaults or been passed down through Arab scholars. What makes these references so electrifying is their implication that advanced seafaring cultures might have mapped the globe millennia before recorded history. Some researchers point to the map's depiction of Antarctica's ice-free coastline as evidence. Modern satellite surveys using subsurface radar reveal landmasses beneath the ice that eerily match Reis's outlines. But here's the catch: Antarctica's northern shores haven't been exposed since at least 4,000 BCE, long before any known civilization could have charted them. This has led to a radical theory that Reis's sources might preserve knowledge from a prehistoric maritime society, one that explored the poles during the last interglacial period when sea levels were dramatically lower. Critics dismiss this as wishful thinking, arguing that Reis could have simply conflated myths with real geography. Ancient texts like Ptolemy's geography spoke of a terra australis, a hypothetical southern landmass scholars had speculated about since antiquity. Maybe Reis grafted these theories onto real coastal data, creating an accidental chimera of fact and folklore. Yet even skeptics struggle to explain how his map nails latitudes with mathematical precision unheard of in 16th century Europe. The grid lines use a complex spherical trigonometry system, knowledge the Ottomans weren't known to possess. The plot thickens when we examine the Columbus connection. Reis wrote that the Genos explorer relied on a now-lost map to reach the Caribbean, one possibly copied from Alexandrian originals. If Columbus had access to such documents, it would rewrite the narrative of his voyages, from blind luck to calculated navigation using antique charts. Supporting this, some of Reis's Caribbean placements align with pre-Columbian Mesoamerican trade routes, hinting at cross-Atlantic contact long before 1492. But the real enigma lies in the gaps. Why did Reis's sources vanish without trace? Were they destroyed in purges of heretical knowledge or simply crumbled to dust in forgotten archives? The Topkapi Palace alone holds over 300,000 uncatalogued manuscripts. What secrets might still lurk in their pages? Until we uncover those phantom source maps, the Piri Reis artifact remains a tantalizing keyhole into history's lost chapters, one that suggests our ancestors might have known far more of the world than we ever imagined. And perhaps buried beneath some library's dust, the proof still waits. High above the ancient city of Cusco, the zigzagging walls of Sacsayhuamán rise like the serrated teeth of a stone giant. These colossal limestone blocks, some weighing over 120 tons, fit together with a precision that defies logic. No mortar binds them, yet even today, 500 years after their construction, you can't slip a razor blade between the seams. The joints are so exact they resemble liquid stone poured into molds rather than cut by hand. How did the Inca, working without iron tools or the wheel, achieve masonry so flawless it rivals modern laser-cut architecture? The mystery deepens when you examine the stone's irregular shapes. Unlike rectangular blocks seen in Egyptian or Roman ruins, these are polygonal masterpieces, each with up to 12 angles that interlock like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. This wasn't just aesthetic, it was seismic genius. Peru's earthquake-prone landscape demanded structures that could sway without collapsing, and Sacsayhuamán's jigsaw design disperses shock waves like a natural shock absorber. But here's the head-scratcher: how did the Inca test fit these gargantuan pieces without advanced mathematics or drafting tools? Some stones have knobs and indentations that hint at a system. Perhaps they were trial-fitted on nearby terrain before final placement, like dry stone dress rehearsals. Then there's the question of transportation. The nearest quarry lies over 20 miles away across rugged mountains. Incan legends speak of stones softened by herbal mixtures or even acoustic levitation, where sound waves made boulders weightless. While these tales strain credulity, modern experiments show some truth. Certain plant extracts can temporarily weaken stone surfaces, making them easier to carve. As for moving the blocks, the Inca likely used log rollers, sledges, and thousands of laborers, but the logistics remain staggering. But the most baffling aspect isn't the how, it's the why. Sacsayhuamán wasn't just a fortress. Its walls curve in sacred geometry, mirroring the Milky Way, suggesting celestial alignment. The zigzags may represent lightning bolts, honoring the god Ilapa, or fractal patterns found in Incan textiles. Recent laser scans revealed hidden chambers beneath the walls, fueling theories of ceremonial tunnels or time capsules sealed within the masonry. Alternative researchers point to the stone's surfaces. Some sections appear vitrified, as if exposed to extreme heat. Could the Inca have used lenses or reflectors to focus sunlight for cutting? Or does this hint at lost technology, like the mythical mirrors said to melt stone in Andean oral histories? Mainstream archaeologists dismiss such claims, citing natural erosion or later Spanish modifications. Yet one truth endures: these walls were built to last not just centuries but millennia, a stone hymn to a civilization that carved its legacy into the very bones of the earth. Stand before Sacsayhuamán, and you're not just seeing a ruin, you're witnessing a conversation between humanity and stone, where every angled joint whispers a challenge to our modern arrogance. Maybe the Inca knew secrets we've forgotten, or maybe their primitive methods were far more sophisticated than we've credited. Either way, these walls stand as silent tutors, teaching us that precision isn't always born from technology. Sometimes it's born from patience, observation, and a reverence for the materials beneath our hands. When you consider the sheer scale of Sacsayhuamán's construction, mainstream archaeology offers a straightforward, if staggering, explanation: brute force and ingenuity. The Inca Empire mobilized tens of thousands of laborers through their mita system, a form of communal service where citizens contributed time to state projects. Using bronze and stone tools, teams would have painstakingly pounded boulders into shape, grinding surfaces with harder stones and sand until the fits were seamless. Ropes made from llama hide, wooden sledges, and earthen ramps could have transported these monoliths, with log rollers easing their movement across the Andes' treacherous slopes. It's a theory backed by colonial accounts and experimental archaeology. Modern attempts to replicate the techniques show it's possible, if unimaginably laborious. But here's where the cracks in the conventional narrative appear. Some blocks bear drill marks and precise angled cuts that seem impossible without metal harder than the Inca's bronze. Even more puzzling are the stone nubs left protruding on certain surfaces, features with no structural purpose, almost like handles. Could these have been attachment points for a lost technology? Or grips for some kind of lifting mechanism? This is where fringe theories take root, suggesting the Inca, or a predecessor culture, possessed knowledge far beyond what we've credited them with. Among the most tantalizing alternative ideas is the concept of acoustic levitation. Andean oral traditions speak of priests using sound to make stones light as a feather, and modern experiments with resonant frequencies show vibrations can reduce friction between objects. In theory, precise sonic waves might allow heavy blocks to be maneuvered with minimal force. While no direct evidence supports this at Sacsayhuamán, similar legends exist worldwide, from the Egyptian secrets of harmonics to Tibetan monks' claims of chanting stones into place. Then there's the vitrification theory, patches of stone that appear melted as if exposed to extreme heat. Could the Inca have used lenses or reflectors to focus sunlight, softening surfaces for shaping? Ancient texts describe burning mirrors used in rituals. Perhaps their application was more practical than we thought. Skeptics rightly demand harder proof. Sound levitation remains unproven at this scale, and vitrification could stem from lightning strikes or Spanish gunpowder. Yet the persistence of these legends across cultures raises an intriguing question. Did ancient builders observe and harness natural phenomena modern science has yet to fully unravel? The Incas' intimate knowledge of their environment, from plant chemistry to geology, might have given them shortcuts we'd label impossible. Perhaps the truth lies in a fusion of methods. The Inca were masterful pragmatists, blending innovation with tradition. While thousands of workers likely hauled and shaped most stones, could specialized teams have employed advanced techniques for the most challenging elements? After all, Sacsayhuamán wasn't built in a day. Generations of trial and error might have yielded secrets passed down orally, then lost to conquest and time. What's undeniable is the result: walls that have weathered centuries of earthquakes, conquest, and erosion with barely a shifted stone. Whether carved by hand or shaped by forgotten science, Sacsayhuamán stands as a testament to a civilization that turned impossibility into reality, one meticulously fitted block at a time. And until we uncover definitive proof, the stones keep their secrets, inviting us to reconsider not just how they were built, but how much we've underestimated the ingenuity of the past. Nestled inside a chunk of ancient limestone in a small Texas museum sits an artifact that shouldn't exist: a 6-inch iron hammer with a wooden handle, its head fused into rock dated over 400 million years old. Discovered in 1936 by hikers near London, Texas, this unassuming tool has sparked one of archaeology's most heated debates. According to standard geology, the rock encasing the hammer formed during the Ordovician period, a time when complex life had barely crawled onto land, let alone develop the technology to forge metal tools. So how did a clearly human-made object end up sealed inside stone predating dinosaurs by hundreds of millions of years? Geologists have a straightforward explanation: the hammer isn't as ancient as the rock around it. They argue that minerals can form concretions, hardened deposits that accumulate around objects relatively quickly in geological terms. In this scenario, the hammer might have been dropped or buried a few centuries ago, only for dissolved limestone to encase it in what appears to be ancient stone. Supporting this, X-rays show the hammer's metal lacks the impurities typical of prehistoric ironwork, suggesting 19th century metallurgy. The wooden handle, while partially fossilized, still contains traces of uncarbonized cellulose, impossible after millions of years. But here's where the story twists. Independent researchers who have studied the hammer point to peculiar details that defy easy dismissal. The iron shows an unusual purity and lack of sulfur characteristics not seen in modern hammerheads. Microscopic analysis reveals the metal's crystalline structure differs from contemporary smithing techniques, hinting at some forgotten forging process. Most baffling of all, the rock itself shows no signs of fractures or secondary mineralization where the hammer breaches it, as if the object was placed there before the stone fully solidified. Alternative theories swing from the plausible to the extraordinary. Some suggest the hammer belonged to an advanced but now vanished human civilization that existed before recorded history, its technology lost to some catastrophic event. Others propose it's evidence of time travelers accidentally leaving artifacts in the distant past, a fringe idea, but one that persists due to the object's apparent temporal dislocation. More grounded researchers speculate it could be a hoax, though no one has demonstrated how someone in the 1930s could have faked such convincing mineral fusion. The London hammer forces us to confront uncomfortable gaps in our understanding. If it's a modern tool, why don't its metallurgical fingerprints match any known period? If ancient, how did ironworkers exist 500 million years before humans evolved? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between: an object from a more recent but still undocumented culture, encased through some rare geological fluke we don't yet comprehend. What makes this humble hammer so compelling isn't just its mystery, but what it represents the possibility that our timeline of human progress might be missing chapters. Every time science dismisses an anomaly as contamination or hoax, we risk closing doors to discoveries that could rewrite history. The London Hammer may not prove ancient astronauts or time travel, but it undeniably proves one thing: the past is far stranger than our textbooks dare admit. And sometimes the most ordinary-looking objects can deliver the most extraordinary challenges to everything we think we know. To understand why the London Hammer sparks such controversy, we need to examine the rock that encases it, a dense, iron-rich limestone formation characteristic of the Ordovician period. Conventional geology places this layer between 450 and 500 million years old, formed in an ancient sea long before mammals, dinosaurs, or even reptiles existed. The hammer's head is embedded so seamlessly that the stone appears to have molded around it, with no visible gaps or sediment layers separating metal from rock. This fusion is what initially convinced some researchers they'd found proof of impossible antiquity, but mainstream science offers a different interpretation. Geologists point to a natural phenomenon called concretion, where minerals precipitate from groundwater and accumulate around an object, hardening into rock-like consistency over centuries rather than millennia. In this scenario, the hammer could have been buried in wet, mineral-rich soil a few hundred years ago, with dissolved limestone gradually cementing around it. Similar concretions have been found encasing everything from Civil War bullets to Pioneer-era tools, some appearing deceptively ancient. Supporting this, the hammer's rock shell contains traces of modern-era pollutants like coal particles, suggesting formation during the Industrial Age. Yet the debate isn't so easily settled. Critics of the concretion theory highlight inconsistencies in the rock's composition. Unlike typical concretions, which form unevenly with visible layers, the hammer's casing is homogeneous, showing no concentric bands or sedimentation patterns. Even more puzzling, the rock immediately surrounding the hammer exhibits slight magnetic anomalies uncommon in limestone but plausible if the iron leached minerals into the stone over time. If this leaching occurred, it suggests the hammer spent far longer encased than a few centuries. Then there's the location. The hammer was discovered in a creek bed where Ordovician limestone outcrops naturally, but the area also has a history of mining activity in the 19th century. Could miners have dropped the tool, allowing it to become embedded in younger deposits that later hardened? Possibly, except the rock's isotopic ratios match deeper, older strata, not surface-level formations. This leaves us with two competing narratives. Either the hammer is a recent artifact ensnared by a geological fluke, or it's a relic from a time when human history and deep time collide in ways we can't yet explain. The most measured perspective lies somewhere between. While the hammer's design and metallurgy align roughly with 19th century American tools, certain features like its unusual chlorine-rich iron composition don't match any known smithing traditions. Perhaps it represents a localized or experimental forging technique lost to time. As for the rock, concretion remains the likeliest explanation, but one that doesn't fully account for the object's seamless integration. Until new testing methods emerge, the London Hammer will keep its secrets, challenging us to reconsider how quickly geology can mimic antiquity, or whether our timelines of human ingenuity need rewiring. Either way, it stands as a testament to nature's ability to blur the lines between the possible and the unfathomable, leaving us to wonder what other anomalies might lie buried in plain sight. Deep in the remote Bayan-Ha mountains of China, a discovery surfaced that would ignite decades of debate: the enigmatic Dropa stones. In 1938, archaeologist Kai Pute reportedly uncovered a series of bizarre burials in a high-altitude cave system. Among the skeletal remains, reportedly small and oddly proportioned, lay hundreds of stone discs, each roughly a foot in diameter with a hole at the center, resembling primitive records. But what turned these artifacts from curious to controversial were the microscopic spiral grooves covering their surfaces, later claimed to contain an undeciphered script. If genuine, these stones could rewrite history, dating back 12,000 years with inscriptions no known culture should have been capable of creating at the time. Initial reports described the discs as made of granite laced with cobalt and other rare metals, their surfaces etched with tiny hieroglyphs forming a continuous spiral text. When researchers allegedly magnified the markings, they claimed to find a narrative describing extraterrestrial beings, the Dropa, whose spacecraft crashed in the mountains millennia ago. According to the translated account, these beings intermarried with local tribes, leaving behind hybrid descendants and these stones as a record of their arrival. The story sounds ripped from science fiction, which is precisely why mainstream archaeology dismisses it as exactly that. The skepticism is rooted in glaring inconsistencies. No photographs of the original excavation exist, and the discs themselves vanished during World War II, leaving only drawings and second-hand descriptions. The purported translations emerged decades later from questionable sources, including a Soviet researcher whose findings were never peer-reviewed. Modern linguists point out the script resembles no known writing system, ancient or modern, while geologists argue the described cobalt-laced granite isn't native to the region. Even the name Dropa raises red flags. It's grammatically nonsensical in local Tibetan dialects, suggesting fabrication by outsiders. Yet the legend persists, fueled by tantalizing crumbs of plausibility. In the 1960s, a Russian scientist named Vyacheslav Sayshev claimed to have analyzed a surviving disk, detecting unusual vibrational frequencies when exposed to electricity, as if the stone retained some latent energy. Meanwhile, ethnographers note that oral traditions among the isolated Ham people near the discovery site speak of small, yellow-faced ancestors who descended from the clouds. Could these tales be distorted memories of an ancient encounter, or merely coincidence spun into myth? The most damning evidence against the Dropa stones comes from material science. Recent attempts to track down any surviving discs led researchers to a handful of artifacts in Chinese provincial museums, but testing revealed them to be nothing more than common by discs. Ritual jade objects from the Neolithic period, their holes and grooves consistent with ceremonial use. No mysterious inscriptions were found. This aligns with a known 20th century trend of embellishing archaeological finds to bolster nationalist narratives during China's turbulent mid-century decades. Still, the Dropa stones' enduring allure lies in what they represent: the human craving for connection with the inexplicable. Whether hoax, misinterpretation, or a lost chapter of history, they challenge us to ask how easily our desire for wonder can outpace evidence. Perhaps the real mystery isn't the stones themselves, but why we so desperately want them to be real. After all, in a universe as vast as ours, who's to say some ancient whisper of the extraordinary isn't still waiting, buried in some forgotten cave, to append everything we think we know? The story of the Dropa stones takes an even stranger turn when you examine the supposed crash site where they were found. According to Kai Pute's controversial account, the cave where the discs were discovered also contained peculiar wall carvings depicting beings with oversized heads and slender bodies, alongside celestial objects resembling flying saucers. These drawings, if authentic, would predate any known human depiction of spacecraft by thousands of years, fueling speculation that the stones were records left by stranded extraterrestrial visitors. The narrative gets wilder. Some versions of the tale claim the skeletons found nearby measured barely 4 feet tall with abnormally large skulls, their bones allegedly displaying genetic anomalies inconsistent with Homo sapiens. Modern archaeology has systematically dismantled these claims. Forensic analysis of the few available photographs shows the cave paintings are likely much more recent than reported, with pigments that don't match prehistoric mineral sources. As for the skeletons, no accredited institution has ever examined them. They've become the Bigfoot of archaeology, often referenced but never produced. The entire account hinges on second-hand reports from the 1940s, when China's archaeological record-keeping was notoriously spotty during wartime upheaval. Even the cave's location remains disputed. Multiple expeditions to the Bayan Ha region have failed to relocate the original discovery site. Yet the story persists in fringe circles largely due to one tantalizing detail: the spiral grooves. Mainstream archaeologists maintain these were created by primitive drilling tools used for ceremonial purposes, similar to Neolithic discs found across Asia. But UFO enthusiasts point to a 1962 Russian study, later discredited, claiming the grooves, when magnified, revealed etched symbols arranged in perfect mathematical sequences. This report suggested the stones might be data storage devices of some kind, their spiral patterns mimicking modern optical discs. The comparison is visually striking but scientifically baseless. No verifiable testing has ever supported this theory. The most compelling debunking comes from linguists. The alleged Dropa script bears no resemblance to any known ancient writing system, nor does it follow logical grammatical structures. When independent researchers attempted to verify translations, they found the symbols changed dramatically between different published drawings of the same disc, a clear red flag for fabrication. Meanwhile, anthropologists note that the Ham people indigenous to the region have no oral traditions matching the elaborate spacefaring narrative, only generic ancestor myths common to many isolated cultures. What makes the Dropa stones fascinating isn't their dubious extraterrestrial connection, but what they reveal about how myths take root. The story gained traction during the Cold War space race, when fascination with UFOs was at its peak. Newspapers hungry for sensational copy amplified the tale, while nationalist agendas in both China and the USSR had motives to exaggerate ancient advanced technologies. Today, the stones serve as a cautionary tale about confirmation bias, how easily we project our modern fantasies onto the past. Yet they also remind us that history is full of genuine mysteries still waiting for sober investigation. For every hoax like the Dropa stones, there might be a real Rosetta Stone out there, one that could truly rewrite our understanding of human origins, if only we're willing to separate fact from fiction. Hidden away in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, lies a piece of linen cloth that has sparked centuries of debate, devotion, and scientific scrutiny: the Shroud of Turin. Measuring approximately 14 feet long and 3.5 feet wide, this fragile textile bears the faint, ghostly imprint of a bearded man with wounds consistent with crucifixion, nail marks at the wrists and feet, a spear puncture in the side, and lacerations across the back resembling scourging. To many faithful, this is no ordinary artifact. It's the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ, miraculously imprinted with his image during the resurrection. But to skeptics, it's an elaborate medieval forgery. The truth, science hasn't settled the debate, and the more we study it, the deeper the mystery becomes. What makes the shroud's image so baffling isn't just its subject matter. It's how the image was created. Unlike paintings or dyes, the coloration isn't applied to the surface but embedded in the very fibers, as if produced by a fleeting chemical reaction. The image displays uncanny three-dimensional properties when analyzed with advanced imaging software, suggesting it wasn't painted by hand but formed through some form of radiant energy. Researchers have tried replicating the effect using everything from ultraviolet lasers to scorching techniques, yet no method perfectly matches the shroud's unique characteristics. Even more perplexing, the image contains no brushstrokes or pigments, yet it encodes precise anatomical details, a level of biological accuracy uncommon in medieval art, including accurate depictions of blood flow from wounds that align with forensic studies of crucifixion. Then there's the carbon dating controversy. In 1988, 3 independent labs tested small samples of the shroud using radiocarbon dating, concluding the linen originated between 1260 and 1390, squarely in the medieval period. Case closed, not quite. Critics argue the tested samples came from a repaired section or were contaminated by centuries of handling, fire damage, and even bacterial growth. Later studies noted the shroud's flax fibers contain vanillin, a compound that degrades over time. Medieval linen should still retain traces, but the shroud's fibers show none, suggesting an age far older than carbon dating indicated. Some researchers propose the cloth could date back to the 1st century, based on pollen grains found embedded in the fibers matching plants native to ancient Judea. The shroud's resilience adds another layer of intrigue. In 1532, a fire nearly destroyed it, leaving scorch marks and water damage, yet the image remained intact. Centuries of veneration left it folded, handled, and exposed to candle smoke, yet the faint imprint persists. Modern conservation efforts use climate-controlled cases to slow its deterioration, but even today, no one can explain how such a delicate image survived centuries of wear while defying replication. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't whether the shroud is authentic, but how it challenges our understanding of history and science. If it's medieval, who could have created such a biologically precise, three-dimensional image without modern tools? If it's ancient, what natural or supernatural process could have left such a mark? The shroud refuses to fit neatly into any narrative, leaving us with a mystery that bridges faith and science, history and art. And whether you see it as a holy relic or an unsolved puzzle, one thing is certain. This fragile piece of linen holds a power far beyond its threads, the power to make us wonder, to question, and to stand humbly before the unknown. The shroud's mysterious image isn't just a visual puzzle, it's a chemical enigma that defies medieval craftsmanship. Modern spectroscopy reveals the coloration isn't paint, dye, or any known pigment from the Middle Ages. Instead, the faint sepia tones come from oxidized cellulose fibers, as if the linen's surface underwent a precise, localized aging process. This isn't something artists could have faked with period techniques. The effect resembles scorching but lacks the charring or heat distortion seen in torch-made images. Even more baffling, the coloration penetrates only the top 2 micro-layers of each fiber, a level of control impossible with brushes or direct contact methods. Scientists attempting to replicate the shroud's chemistry hit walls at every turn. In 2009, a team from Italy's ENIA research agency spent 5 years testing ultraviolet radiation on linen, finding brief bursts of extreme UV light could produce similar superficial discoloration, but only in microscopic patches. To create the shroud's full body image would require a flash of light equivalent to 34,000 excimer lasers firing simultaneously, a feat beyond not just medieval technology but modern capabilities. Even if some forgotten alchemist stumbled upon this effect, controlling it to render anatomical details like muscle contours and bloodstains with photographic precision strains credulity. Then there's the blood. Forensic analyzers confirm the reddish stains contain hemoglobin and bilirubin, compounds found in actual trauma victims. The stain's edges display a unique serum halo pattern, indicating they seeped into the cloth before clotting, exactly what happens with real wounds. Medieval forgers wouldn't have known these microscopic details, let alone replicated them without microscopes. Skeptics argue the blood could have been added later, but here's the catch. The bloodstains lie beneath the image, suggesting the body was wrapped first, then the image formed around it. The most damning evidence against forgery, the absence of directionality. Paintbrush strokes, sponge marks, or rubbing techniques all leave microscopic trails betraying human effort. The shroud's image, however, shows no such signs. It appears uniformly faint regardless of fiber orientation, as if projected onto the cloth rather than applied. This rules out not just painting but all known medieval replication methods, from acid etching to powdered pigment transfers. Perhaps the strongest argument for authenticity comes from what the shroud lacks: an artist's fingerprints. No overpainting, no trial lines, no corrections. Every attempted reproduction requires multiple steps and adjustments. The shroud's image is eerily first draft perfect. Even Leonardo da Vinci, often absurdly credited as the forger, couldn't have achieved this without leaving traces of his process. What emerges isn't just a debate about age or origin, but a boundary-pushing question. Could the shroud be the residue of some unknown physical event? Some researchers point to theories involving corona discharge or resurrection-era particle radiation. Though these remain speculative, the real takeaway is humbler. Our understanding of history and science still has gaps, and sometimes the past leaves us artifacts that refuse to fit neatly into categories. Whether divine or inexplicably advanced, the shroud's pigments whisper a tantalizing possibility that our ancestors or something beyond them possessed knowledge we've yet to rediscover. Rising from a quiet field in rural Georgia, the enigmatic Georgia Guidestones stood for decades as a modern-day Rosetta Stone of apocalyptic advice, until their sudden destruction turned mystery into legend. Erected in 1980 under mysterious circumstances, this 19-foot-tall granite monument bore 10 directives for humanity carved in 8 languages, from English to Swahili, arranged like a compass pointing to global salvation. The messages ranged from pragmatic, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, to cryptic, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. But who commissioned this eerie time capsule, and why did its anonymous creators insist the stones would stand through the ages, while leaving no trace of their own identity? The Guidestones' origin story reads like a spy thriller. In 1979, a man using the pseudonym Robert Christian walked into Elberton Granite Finishing Company, claiming to represent a small group of loyal Americans planning a monument to the dawn of an enlightened age. He paid in full with untraceable funds, demanding absolute secrecy. The design specifications were precise: 6 granite slabs weighing over 200 tons total, aligned astronomically to track the sun's solstices and equinoxes, with a hole drilled to view the North Star. Embedded in the capstone was a plaque listing the project's sponsors, except every name led to dead ends when journalists later investigated. For 42 years, the stones attracted pilgrims and protesters alike. Some saw them as a blueprint for sustainable living. Others detected something darker: a shadowy elite's manifesto for depopulation. This paranoia intensified when the monument became a rallying point for conspiracy theorists, especially after 2022. Markings appeared on the stones reading, "Death to the New World Order." Then, in July 2022, disaster struck. An explosion, later deemed intentional, reduced parts of the monument to rubble, followed by authorities demolishing the remains for safety reasons. The timing raised eyebrows. The destruction came just hours before a documentary exposing new clues about the Guidestones' origins was set to premiere. What lingers isn't just the mystery of who built them, but why their warnings resonate so uneasily today. The Guidestones' first commandment, maintain humanity under 500 million, would require eliminating over 90% of Earth's current population. Was this a dire ecological warning or something more sinister? Linguists noted oddities in the phrasing. The English used archaic constructions unlike modern American speech, fueling speculation the authors were foreign or deliberately obfuscating. Meanwhile, astronomers pointed out the structure's alignments mirrored ancient megalithic sites like Stonehenge. Was it meant to communicate across millennia like its prehistoric predecessors? The stone's abrupt demise only amplified the questions. No group claimed responsibility for the bombing, and investigators closed the case without arrests. Fragments salvaged by locals revealed tantalizing details. microscopic markings possibly encoding data, and traces of rare minerals not native to Georgia. Were the Guidestones merely a provocative art project, as some academics insist, or were they, as conspiracy forums allege, a dead man's switch meant to trigger upon destruction, with hidden copies of their message waiting to be found? Today, the empty field where the monument once stood serves as a pilgrimage site for those convinced the truth hasn't been fully erased. Some whisper that the Guidestones' real purpose wasn't to guide the present, but to warn the future, a distress signal carved in stone meant for survivors of a coming collapse. Whether prophecy or provocation, their legacy endures, a riddle wrapped in granite, shattered before we could decode it. And perhaps that was always the point, not to provide answers, but to force us to ask who gets to write the rules for humanity's next chapter. The Georgia Guidestones weren't just a monument, they were a manifesto, a survival guide etched in stone for a future that might never come. Each of its 10 commandments carried the weight of prophecy, urging humanity toward radical changes to avert catastrophe. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature stands as the most chilling, a directive that would require unimaginable upheaval to achieve. But was this a call for voluntary restraint or a dark hint at forces waiting to correct our numbers? The ambiguity lingers, wrapped in granite and intention. These weren't vague suggestions but precise, almost clinical instructions. Commandment 4, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason, reads like an Enlightenment philosopher's plea, rejecting dogma in favor of rationality. Yet the stone's creators cloaked themselves in secrecy, leaving no rational explanation for their motives. The paradox is striking, a monument preaching transparency built by shadows. Some linguists detect an archaic, almost biblical cadence in the phrasing, while others note the use of fitness in the reproduction guideline echoes early 20th century eugenics rhetoric. Was this a warning, a blueprint, or a test dubbed America's Stonehenge? The Guidestones shared more with ancient megaliths than first met the eye. Its astronomical alignments marking solstices, equinoxes, and the North Star mirrored Neolithic sites designed to track celestial cycles. But where Stonehenge likely honored cosmic rhythms, the Guidestones seemed to count down to something darker. The capstone's engraved disclaimer, "Let these be guidestones to an age of reason," felt less like optimism and more like a contingency plan. Who were these anonymous architects preparing for? Future generations, alien visitors, or a post-collapse remnant desperate for direction? The stone's multilingualism added another layer of intrigue. Translations in Hindi, Swahili, and Classical Hebrew suggested a global audience, yet the omission of Chinese and Russian fueled theories of Western elitism. The choice of languages wasn't random. Each represented a linguistic lineage with deep historical roots, as if the message needed to survive the erosion of modern dialects. This wasn't just about communication, it was about preservation across millennia. Then there's the eerie timing. Erected at the dawn of the AIDS crisis and Cold War tensions, the Guidestones' emphasis on guiding reproduction wisely took on ominous undertones. Conspiracy theorists latched onto whispers of bioweapons and population control, while environmentalists saw a stark ecological wake-up call: the truth. We'll never know. The explosion that shattered the monument in 2022 didn't just destroy granite, it vaporized the chance for answers. Today, fragments of the Guidestones circulate among collectors, some bearing laser-etched serial numbers invisible to the naked eye. Were these tracking codes or parts of a larger puzzle? The stone's physical absence has only magnified their myth, a ghostly whisper from those who believed they could architect humanity's salvation. Whether sinister or prophetic, one truth remains. In a world hurtling toward crisis, the Guidestones dared to ask if we'd survive ourselves, and in their silence the question lingers. Buried beneath the sleepy villages of Zhejiang province in China, the Longyou caves stretch like an underground city forgotten by time. discovered by accident in 1992 when a local farmer drained a pond and stumbled upon a hidden entrance. This sprawling network of hand-carved caverns defies all logic. Covering over 30,000 square meters, roughly the size of 40 football fields, these artificial grottos feature towering pillars, precise staircases, and walls chiseled with uniform parallel grooves in patterns so intricate they seem machine-made. Yet carbon dating suggests they were excavated over 2,000 years ago, at a time when even basic iron tools were scarce in the region. How could an ancient workforce have hollowed out millions of cubic feet of stone without leaving a single historical record, tool mark, or even a legend about its creation? The precision of the Longyou caves borders on the uncanny. Every surface, from ceilings to floors, bears the same consistent 60-degree chisel marks, as if a single craftsman or an army working in perfect unison methodically sculpted the entire complex. The walls and pillars align with such geometric perfection that modern laser measurements show less than a millimeter of deviation across vast expanses. Even more baffling is the acoustics. Certain chambers amplify whispers with eerie clarity, while others dampen sound entirely, an effect that would require advanced knowledge of wave dynamics. How did laborers achieve this without blueprints, mathematics, or even written language to coordinate such a project? The absence of debris is another puzzle. Where did all the extracted stone go? Estimates suggest over 1 million tons of rock were removed, yet no rubble piles or construction waste have ever been found nearby. Historians hit a wall when searching for clues. Not a single scroll, stele, or folktale from China's extensive dynastic records mentions the caves. This silence is deafening in a civilization known for meticulously documenting monumental projects like the Great Wall or Terracotta Army. The nearby Fenghuang Mountain, a site of ancient quarries, shows no evidence of supplying stone for the caves. Even local oral traditions contain only vague references to a place the gods dug, with no practical explanation. Could the caves have been a clandestine undertaking, erased from history for reasons we'll never know? Some scholars speculate they were imperial mining operations, though the lack of mineral deposits undermines that theory. Others propose they served as secret bunkers for royalty during wartime, yet no artifacts or inscriptions support this. The most haunting question isn't how the caves were built, but why. Their layout defies conventional purposes: no signs of habitation, no burial niches, no altars. The grooved walls might have held symbolic meaning, resembling the patterns on ritual bronze vessels from the Chu Kingdom era. But then why carve them underground where no one could see? A recent theory suggests the caves functioned as a giant resonance chamber for sound-based rituals, with their precise angles tuned to specific frequencies. Experiments show striking harmonic vibrations when chanting certain tones in the deepest chambers, hinting at a possible spiritual or scientific application lost to time. What lingers today is the unsettling genius of the Longyou caves. Unlike Egypt's pyramids or Peru's Nazca lines, there's no grand narrative to explain them, just an anonymous underground masterpiece. Perhaps their true purpose wasn't to be seen or remembered, but to preserve something beyond our understanding. As you stand in those echoing halls, running your fingers over grooves carved by hands millennia gone, one truth becomes clear: some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to humble us, reminding that history's deepest secrets often lie buried, silent, and waiting. The moment you whisper inside the Longyou caves, something extraordinary happens. Your voice doesn't just echo, it transforms. Certain chambers amplify sound with such clarity that a soft murmur carries like a shout, while others swallow noise whole, creating pockets of eerie silence. This isn't random acoustics, it's precision engineering carved into stone over 2 millennia ago. Researchers measuring the cave's resonant frequencies made a spine-tingling discovery. The angles of the walls, the spacing of the grooves, even the curvature of the ceilings align to enhance specific tones, particularly those in the range of 50 to 100 Hz frequencies associated with ritual chanting and meditative drones. It's as if the entire complex were designed as a giant instrument, turning human breath into something almost sacred. Archaeoacoustics experts point to ancient traditions where sound played a divine role. In Tibet, monks still use low-frequency chanting to induce trance states, while Greek amphitheaters harnessed natural acoustics to make unamplified voices audible to thousands. The Longyou caves might belong to this lost lineage of sonic architecture, where space wasn't just shaped for function but for vibration. One theory suggests the grooves lining the walls weren't decorative. They were acoustic baffles strategically placed to diffuse sound waves and eliminate dissonance. When researchers tested this by playing traditional Chinese zither music in the caves, the notes resonated with unnatural sustain, as if the stone itself were singing. But the mystery deepens when you consider who or what might have used these spaces. No soot marks from torches or oil lamps mar the ceilings, implying the builders worked in darkness or with a light source that left no trace. The few artifacts found, a stone mallet, a broken ceramic vessel, offer no clues about rituals performed here. Were these chambers used for initiation rites, where initiates whispered secrets meant only for the gods' ears? Or were they something more unsettling? Local folklore speaks of earth groans, underground vibrations once believed to be the planet's life force. Could the caves have been an attempt to harness that energy, a bridge between the human and the unseen? The most haunting possibility is that the cave's sound properties weren't just an accident of design, but the very reason for their existence. In 2018, a team from Zhejiang University mapped the cave's resonance patterns and found something startling. Standing at precise points in the largest chamber, a single voice can generate harmonic overtones so complex they mimic a chorus. It's an effect modern sound engineers struggle to replicate even with digital tools. If this was intentional, it implies a sophistication in ancient acoustics that rivals our own, a technology of vibration lost to time. Today, the caves hum with the footsteps of tourists, their whispers bouncing off walls that still remember older voices. Whether temple, instrument, or something beyond our understanding, one truth lingers in the air: these aren't just empty chambers. They're frozen music, a song in stone waiting centuries for someone to listen. And the longer we study them, the more we wonder, were they built to speak to us or to something else entirely? High on the walls of the Hathor Temple at Dendera, Egypt, a series of enigmatic carvings flicker with secrets that refuse to stay buried. Among the usual scenes of gods and pharaohs, one peculiar image stands out: a large, bulb-shaped object with a coiled serpent inside, held aloft by a priest-like figure. To the untrained eye, it looks uncannily like a modern light bulb, complete with what appears to be a filament and a socket. Could this be evidence that the ancient Egyptians harnessed electricity thousands of years before Edison? Or is there a more symbolic explanation lurking in the shadows? The so-called Dendera light has become a lightning rod for controversy. Proponents of the ancient electricity theory point to the carving striking resemblance to a Crookes tube, an early electrical discharge device. They argue the serpent represents a glowing filament, the bulb's base mirrors a socket, and the cable leading to a box resembles a power source, even more compelling. The temple's subterranean chambers contain traces of bitumen, a material known to conduct electricity, and depictions of what some interpret as insulated wiring. Could the priests of Hathor have illuminated their sacred spaces with arc lamps, their knowledge lost to time? Mainstream Egyptologists counter with a decidedly less shocking interpretation. The serpent, they explain, is a well-documented symbol of divine energy in Egyptian cosmology. The bulb likely represents a lotus flower or a womb, while the snake inside, a form of the god Harsomptus, symbolizes the life force emerging from darkness. The entire scene aligns with well-known creation myths where serpents embody cyclical rebirth, not electrical currents. As for the cable, it's more plausibly a ritual staff or the stem of a sacred plant. But here's where the debate ignites. If the carvings are purely symbolic, why do they appear alongside other temple imagery that seems astonishingly practical? Nearby reliefs show what look like massive batteries and intricate arrays of what could be resistors or capacitors. And why would ancient artisans depict the serpent with such precise, almost technical detail if not representing something tangible? Skeptics dismiss these as coincidental patterns, but the resemblance to electrical components is undeniably eerie. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the temple's design. Dendera's inner sanctum remains mysteriously soot-free, despite being deep underground where torch smoke would have blackened the ceilings. Could some form of cold lighting, like the hypothesized Dendera lamps, have been used? Experiments with replica Egyptian batteries like the Baghdad artifacts show they can produce a faint glow, but nothing bright enough to illuminate entire chambers. Unless, of course, the Egyptians possessed techniques far beyond our current reconstructions. The Dendera carvings force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Ancient symbolism and modern technology sometimes overlap in ways we can't easily dismiss. Whether they depict sacred serpents or sophisticated science, these etchings remind us that the past often speaks in riddles, and sometimes the most electrifying mysteries aren't about finding answers but learning how to ask better questions. Those who claim the Dendera carvings depict ancient light technology often point to a controversial companion artifact, the Baghdad Battery. Discovered in modern-day Iraq, these terracotta jars with copper cylinders and iron rods bear a striking resemblance to basic electrochemical cells. Fill one with vinegar or lemon juice, and it can produce a small but measurable current. Could these have powered the hypothetical Dendera lamps? It's a tempting connection, but Egyptologists quickly highlight the gaps in this theory. For starters, the Baghdad artifacts date to the Parthian period, around 2,000 years after the Dendera carvings were made. Even if similar devices existed in ancient Egypt, no physical evidence, batteries, wires, or connectors, has ever been found in the temple or nearby sites. Then there's the voltage problem. A single Baghdad-style battery generates less than 1 volt, barely enough to make a faint tingle, let alone illuminate a chamber. Stacking multiple batteries in series could theoretically boost the output, but no such arrays have been discovered. Even with dozens linked together, the power would be erratic, at best hardly the steady glow depicted in fringe theories. And why would the Egyptians bury such advanced technology without a trace while immortalizing it in stone? The absence of any textual references to lighting devices in Egypt's extensive records is another glaring hole. If priests wielded electric lamps, wouldn't such a marvel appear in hymns, tomb inventories, or travelers' accounts? The filament debate takes another twist when examining the Dendera serpent's details. Proponents argue its zigzag shape mirrors the erratic glow of an arcing electrical discharge, but Egyptologists counter that serpents in these contexts always symbolize cyclical renewal, never technology. The same motif appears in temple scenes showing gods emerging from lotus blossoms, where no electrical interpretation makes sense. Even the socket holding the bulb has a parallel in other reliefs where it clearly represents a jed pillar, an emblem of stability, not a lamp base. What's often overlooked is the temple's actual lighting methods. Archaeologists have found thousands of oil lamp niches throughout Dendera, with residues confirming their use. The soot-free inner chambers might simply reflect diligent priestly cleaning and obsession with purity well documented in Egyptian rituals. And let's not forget the practicalities. Maintaining glass bulbs or fragile filaments in an era before precision manufacturing would have been near impossible. The most compelling argument against the lightbulb theory lies in the carvings themselves. Scenes adjacent to the lamps show identical bulb-like objects with no possible electrical function. some emitting water or cradling infant deities. If these were light fixtures, why would they double as divine cribs? The uniformity of Egyptian artistic conventions suggests symbolism, not schematics. Yet the mystery lingers because history loves outliers. Maybe the truth isn't binary. Perhaps the priests of Hathor ritualized the concept of divine light in a way that accidentally mirrors modern tech. After all, humanity's oldest habit is seeing the future in the past's reflection. Standing sentinel on the wind-scoured slopes of Easter Island, the Moai statues watch over their land with hollow eyes and impassive faces, each one a silent challenge to modern understanding. These monolithic giants, some towering over 30 feet tall and weighing up to 80 tons, were carved from compressed volcanic ash and somehow transported miles across rugged terrain without wheels, beasts of burden, or any technology beyond stone tools. How did the Rapa Nui people accomplish this feat centuries ago? The answer isn't just about engineering, it's a riddle wrapped in myth, archaeology, and a fierce debate between competing theories. For decades, archaeologists assumed the islanders used log rollers, felling the island's once lush palm forests to create makeshift tracks. Teams would have levered the statues onto these wooden rails, dragging them slowly forward while replenishing the rollers from back to front. Experiments in the 1980s seem to confirm this. Small replicas were successfully moved this way with about 50 people pulling ropes, but the theory crumbles under scrutiny. Easter Island's geography is riddled with steep inclines and uneven volcanic rock, making rolling unstable. Even more damning, deforestation likely occurred after most moai were already erected, meaning the Rapa Nui may not have had enough wood to spare for such projects. Then there's the radical alternative: the statues walked. Oral traditions passed down by Rapa Nui elders describe the moai moving upright, swaying side to side as if guided by spiritual force. In 2012, researchers put this legend to the test. By rigging ropes around a replica moai's base and rocking it rhythmically, they demonstrated that just 18 people could walk a 10-ton statue several hundred yards in under an hour. The motion matches ancient petroglyphs showing moai with bent knees, suggesting a dynamic posture mid-stride. Critics argue this method risks toppling statues, but curiously, many fallen moai along ancient roads lie face down, as if they did tip forward during transport. The truth may lie in a blend of methods. Some moai wear patterns on their bases consistent with dragging, while others show damage matching upright movement. Perhaps the Rapa Nui adapted techniques to terrain, rolling on flat stretches, walking down slopes, even using sledges on lubricated paths. What's undeniable is the ingenuity behind these feats. Without written records, we're left decoding clues in the statues themselves. Their center of gravity tilted forward for easier lifting, their bases slightly curved to aid rocking. Yet the most haunting question isn't how the moai moved, but why. These weren't just monuments, they were vessels of ancestral mana, embodiments of chiefs whose presence protected villages. Transporting them wasn't logistics, it was ceremony. Each swaying step, each rope pulled in unison, would have been a ritual of unity in a society flirting with ecological collapse. When the last moai fell, abandoned mid-journey, it marked more than an engineering failure, it was the unraveling of a worldview. Today, the statues stand as silent teachers, reminding us that the greatest mysteries aren't about tools or techniques, but the human drive to reach beyond our grasp, even when the cost is everything. For centuries, the moai appeared to be nothing more than gigantic stone heads staring blankly from Easter Island's hillsides until archaeologists began to dig. What they unearthed beneath the surface shattered that assumption forever. These iconic heads aren't standalone sculptures at all. They're just the tips of massive, full-bodied figures buried up to their shoulders in sediment. Excavations revealed torsos covered in intricate petroglyph spirals, crescent shapes, and what appear to be stylized canoes carved with ceremonial precision. Some statues descend as much as 20 feet underground, their bodies hidden in a silent embrace with the earth that's preserved them for generations. These buried torsos rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Moai. The petroglyphs aren't random decorations, they're a coded language telling stories lost to time. One recurring motif, a half-circle resembling a crescent moon, might represent the Polynesian lunar calendar vital to agriculture. Others depict fishhooks and waves, symbols of the islanders' seafaring heritage. Most haunting are the carvings of what researchers call ahai po, spirit canoes, believed to carry the dead to the afterlife. These markings suggest the Moai weren't just memorials but conduits between worlds, their bodies serving as literal bridges between the living and the ancestral realm. But here's where the mystery takes a darker turn. Some torsos bear deep, intentional gouges, not erosion but deliberate vandalism. Historical accounts describe clan wars breaking out as the island's resources dwindled, with rival groups toppling each other's statues. The damage aligns with these stories, hinting at a civilization tearing itself apart. Yet other carvings show signs of meticulous repair, as if later generations tried to mend the fractures of their ancestors. The Moai, it seems, weren't just victims of collapse but silent witnesses to resilience. Then there's the puzzle of their burial. How did these monoliths sink so deep? For years, scientists assumed erosion buried them naturally, but soil analysis tells a different story. The statues were intentionally partially interred. Some researchers argue this was a ritual act anchoring the Moai to the Earth's mana. Others propose practical reasons burying them stabilized the statues against earthquakes. But the most poetic theory comes from Rapa Nui elders who speak of the Moai returning to the womb of the island, a cycle of death and rebirth etched in stone. Today, seeing these half-excavated giants, their heads gazing skyward, their bodies whispering secrets from below, forces us to confront how much we've misunderstood. The Moai aren't just relics, they're layered chronicles of a people who carved their hopes and sorrows into the very land that sustained them. And with every new glyph deciphered, every inch of buried torso revealed, we're not just uncovering statues. We're reading the island's soul, one chisel mark at a time. Perched on a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey, the ancient stones of Gobekli Tepe whisper a revolutionary secret, one that unravels everything we thought we knew about human history. Dating back an astonishing 12,000 years, this sprawling temple complex predates the invention of agriculture, pottery, and even permanent settlements by millennia. Its discovery didn't just push back the timeline of civilization, it shattered it, forcing archaeologists to confront a startling possibility that organized religion and monumental architecture might have been the catalysts for human society, not the result of it. What makes Gobekli Tepe so extraordinary isn't just its age, but its sophistication. The site's massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing over 16 tons and towering 16 feet high, are arranged in precise circular formations. Each pillar is adorned with intricate carvings of animals, snakes, foxes, scorpions, and birds, rendered with an artistic flair that defies the era's supposedly primitive toolkits. The craftsmanship is so refined that researchers initially assumed the site couldn't be older than the Bronze Age. But carbon dating doesn't lie. These stones were shaped and erected around 9,600 BCE, a time when humans were supposedly nomadic hunter-gatherers, barely surviving day to day. So how did they achieve such a feat without the stability of farming or permanent homes? The implications are seismic. Conventional wisdom holds that agriculture led to surplus food, which allowed humans to settle down and develop specialized skills like masonry and art. Gobekli Tepe flips this narrative on its head. Here we see evidence of large-scale cooperation and artistic vision emerging before the so-called agricultural revolution. This suggests that spiritual or communal gatherings, perhaps ceremonies to honor the animals depicted on the pillars, drew people together, creating the need for organized labor and shared resources. In other words, religion and art may have been the glue that first bound humans into complex societies, paving the way for farming and cities. But the mystery deepens when you consider the site's deliberate burial. Around 8000 BC, Gobekli Tepe was carefully filled in with thousands of tons of soil, preserving it like a time capsule. Why would a culture invest generations of labor into building something so magnificent, only to hide it from the world? Some theorize it was part of a ritual closing, a way to retire the sacred space as beliefs evolved. Others suspect a cataclysmic event, climate shifts or social upheaval, forced its abandonment. Whatever the reason, the burial protected the carvings, leaving them crisp and vivid for modern excavators to uncover millennia later. Today, only a fraction of Gobekli Tepe has been unearthed, with radar surveys indicating at least 20 more circles still buried beneath the earth. Each new excavation raises more questions than answers. Who were the people capable of such vision and coordination? How did they pass down their skills without writing? And most provocatively, what other lost chapters of human achievement still lie hidden, waiting to rewrite our story? The stones of Gobekli Tepe don't just challenge our timelines, they challenge our arrogance, reminding us that the past is far stranger and far more ingenious than we ever dared imagine. The towering pillars of Gobekli Tepe don't just face random directions, they point to the heavens with uncanny precision. Carved with constellations like Orion's belt and the Pleiades, these 12,000-year-old monoliths might be the world's oldest star maps, suggesting their builders tracked celestial events with astonishing accuracy. Take Pillar 43, nicknamed the Vulture Stone, where a scorpion, a wolf, and a bird cluster in formations mirroring the night sky during the autumn equinox around 10,900 BC. The alignment isn't just artistic, it's mathematical, with carvings corresponding to specific star groups visible only at certain times of year. Was this a prehistoric planetarium or something even more profound? Astronomers analyzing the site's layout made a spine-tingling discovery. The circular enclosures align with the rising and setting points of Sirius, the brightest star in Earth's sky. For early hunter-gatherers, Sirius's annual reappearance signaled critical events like migration or harvest times. But Gobekli Tepe's creators didn't just mark stars, they encoded celestial drama. One pillar shows a fox leaping toward a crescent moon, a scene researchers now believe depicts the Taurid meteor shower, a spectacular event that lit up the skies during the site's heyday. Another depicts a headless man, possibly symbolizing the catastrophic comet impact hypothesized to have triggered the Younger Dryas cooling period around 10,800 BC. These aren't just decorations, they're celestial reports chiseled in stone. Yet mainstream archaeology pushes back. Skeptics argue the carving's interpretations rely on selective pattern matching, a connect-the-dots approach that could force meaning onto coincidental shapes. They note that without written records, we can't know if these animals represented stars at all. Even if some alignments are real, they might reflect spiritual symbolism rather than scientific observation. After all, the builders lacked telescopes or precise measuring tools. But here's the twist. Recent 3D modeling shows the enclosure's sightlines align with solstice sunrises when viewed from specific pillars, suggesting intentional design. The debate boils down to intent. Were these people chronicling the cosmos or weaving it into myth? The most tantalizing clue lies in the site's abandonment. Around 8000 BC, Gobekli Tepe was buried just as Earth's axial tilt shifted, altering celestial alignments. Did the changing skies render its star maps obsolete, or was its burial a farewell to an era when heaven and earth spoke the same language? Modern excavations continue to reveal new carvings, a serpent coiled like the Milky Way, a duck that might symbolize the Cygnus constellation, each one a puzzle piece in humanity's oldest astronomical legacy. Whether observatory, temple, or both, Gobekli Tepe whispers that our ancestors didn't just watch the stars, they conversed with them, etching dialogues in stone that we're only beginning to decode. In the icy depths of the Baltic Sea, a sonar anomaly has haunted researchers and sparked wild speculation since its discovery in 2011. Dubbed the Baltic Sea UFO for its uncanny saucer-like silhouette, this 60-meter-wide object rests nearly 300 feet below the surface, its perfect circular shape and trailing runway defying simple geological explanation. When Swedish salvage divers first encountered it during a treasure hunt, their equipment reportedly malfunctioned as they approached, a detail that immediately fueled conspiracy theories. But is this bizarre formation evidence of ancient aliens, a forgotten Nazi weapon, or just a quirk of nature playing tricks on our imagination? The object's sheer symmetry sets it apart from typical seafloor topography. Sonar images reveal a near-perfect disk with a rounded dome, flanked by what appear to be stair-like formations and a long, linear depression stretching behind it like a skid mark. Skeptics argue it's likely a glacial erratic, a boulder deposited by retreating ice sheets during the last ice age, later sculpted by currents. Yet glacial erratics rarely exhibit such geometric precision, nor do they typically sit atop pillar-like pedestals as this one seems to. Geologists counter that underwater sediment erosion can create surprisingly regular shapes, pointing to similar formations like Malaysia's Magic Rock. But even they admit the Baltic anomaly pushes the limits of natural explanation. Then there's the Nazi angle. The anomaly lies near wartime shipping lanes, and its location aligns with known Nazi naval activity. Some speculate it could be a lost submarine trap or experimental cloaking device, a Die-Glock-like weapon from Nazi occult tech programs. Divers reported metallic readings, and a sample allegedly contained limonite and goethite, metals used in WW2-era construction. Yet no historical records mention such a device, and the depth makes deployment impractical, unless, of course, it was meant to be hidden, an intriguing but unproven possibility. The most tantalizing theory involves extraterrestrial origins. Proponents highlight the object's resemblance to the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars and note its proximity to the Baltic Sea Circle, an area notorious for UFO sightings. The divers' claims of electronic interference mirror reports from UFO encounters, though skeptics attribute this to methane gas or magnetic mineral deposits. When an early dive team captured grainy footage of a black, soot-like substance on the structure, wild rumors spread of alien alloys, though later analysis identified it as ordinary seabed sediment. What makes the Baltic Sea anomaly so compelling isn't just its shape, it's the unresolved questions surrounding it. Why do compasses spin erratically near the site? Why does no other glacial formation in the region look remotely like it, until a fully funded scientific expedition conducts thorough sampling and 3D mapping? Challenging given the depth and cost theories will keep swirling. Maybe it's a geological oddity, maybe a fragment of lost history, or maybe something beyond our current understanding. For now, it remains one of the ocean's deepest secrets, a silent enigma daring us to look closer. Initial dive teams exploring the Baltic Sea anomaly returned with claims that defied conventional geology, reports of smooth metallic surfaces and alloys not found in nature. One diver described a blackened glass-like crust covering parts of the structure, while instruments allegedly detected electromagnetic anomalies near its base. These sensational claims ignited speculation about artificial origins, with some researchers suggesting the object could be composed of extraterrestrial materials or advanced composites unknown to modern science. But when independent scientists analyzed samples, the narrative shifted dramatically. Lab tests identified the metal as nothing more than manganese-rich nodules, a common seabed formation caused by mineral precipitation over millennia. The black crust turned out to be ordinary microbial mats and the electromagnetic interference, likely caused by natural ferromagnetic deposits in the surrounding bedrock. Even the diver's most tantalizing detail, a staircase-like formation, was reclassified as a textbook example of glacial till, sculpted by ancient ice flows. Yet the mystery refuses to die. Skeptics point out that manganese nodules typically form in small, scattered clusters, not as massive, singular disks. And why would compasses malfunction only near this specific formation when ferromagnetic rocks are widespread across the Baltic? The diver's original footage also captured strange, angular protrusions that don't align with known geological processes. Some researchers now argue the anomaly might be a hybrid structure, a natural formation modified by human activity, like a sunken WW2 installation encrusted with mineral deposits over time. The most compelling twist emerged when marine archaeologists reviewed sonar data from adjacent areas. The anomaly sits atop a submerged glacial moraine, a terrain littered with ice-age debris, but it's the only object of its kind for miles. If nature sculpted it, where are the others? This absence of comparable features keeps the debate alive, a reminder that even dismissed discoveries can harbor unanswered questions. Whether mundane or miraculous, the Baltic anomaly's greatest legacy may be its stubborn refusal to fit neatly into any category, a Rorschach test for our hunger to believe there's still wonder lurking in the unexplored. Off the coast of Japan's westernmost island, Yonaguni, lies one of the ocean's most contentious mysteries, a sprawling underwater structure with terraces, steps, and sharp angles so precise they look hand-carved. Discovered in 1986 by local diver Chihiro Aratake, the Yonaguni monument plunges nearly 80 feet below the surface, its massive sandstone blocks forming what some researchers insist are the ruins of an ancient city swallowed by the sea. But is this a relic of a forgotten civilization or merely a breathtaking quirk of nature? The debate has divided scientists for decades, and the answers might rewrite our understanding of human history in the Pacific. At first glance, the monument's features seem undeniably artificial. Its most striking section, dubbed the terrace, consists of near-perfect right angles and flat platforms stacked like a wedding cake. Nearby, two towering pillars appear positioned as if they once supported a massive gateway, while a straight 76-foot-long wall runs with ruler-like precision. Most compelling is the staircase, a series of uniform steps climbing 5 meters upward, each tread eerily consistent in height and depth. Marine geologists who have dived the site note the edges are unnaturally sharp, unlike typical underwater erosion patterns. Even more intriguing, similar formations don't exist anywhere else along Yonaguni's coastline, despite sharing the same bedrock. Skeptics counter that nature is fully capable of such geometric deception. The monument sits in an earthquake-prone zone where seismic activity can fracture rock into clean plains. Ocean currents, too, have sculpted the sandstone over millennia, potentially carving its stepped appearance. Professor Robert Skock, a geologist famous for redating the Sphinx, argues the structure's features align with natural sandstone bedding planes, which often break along parallel lines. He points to nearby formations with similar angles, though none as complex, as evidence of geological rather than human origins. Yet the plot thickens when you examine the site's peculiar details. Divers have uncovered what look like tool marks on certain surfaces, including circular depressions that resemble primitive drill holes. In one section, a relief carving of a turtle, a sacred symbol in ancient Ryukyuan culture, appears etched into the rock. Most baffling of all is a straight 2-meter-long channel running along the monument's base, its edges too precise to dismiss as random erosion. If natural forces created this, why do the features cluster so intentionally in one place? The timeline adds another layer of intrigue. Sea level records show this area was last above water around 10,000 years ago during the end of the last ice age. Mainstream archaeology holds that human societies at that time were nomadic hunter-gatherers, incapable of large-scale stone construction. But what if they're wrong? Alternative researchers point to Gobekli Tepe, the 12,000-year-old Turkish temple complex that shattered similar assumptions. Could Yonaguni be another glimpse of a lost pre-agricultural civilization advanced enough to build monumental structures? Local legends offer tantalizing hints. Okinawan folklore speaks of a sunken city called Nurai Kanai, a paradisiacal land beyond the sea where gods brought prosperity. Some linguists even trace the name Yonaguni to ancient words meaning place of the gods. While oral traditions aren't proof, they weave a narrative that aligns unsettlingly well with the monument's possible age and location. Modern technology might finally settle the debate. Recent 3D mapping reveals the monument's base extends beneath the seabed, suggesting it's not a standalone formation but part of a larger complex. Sonar scans have identified additional geometric shapes nearby, including what could be roads or plazas. Until excavations can retrieve artifacts, tools, pottery, or carvings with indisputable human marks, the Yonaguni monument will remain a Rorschach test for archaeologists. What's undeniable is the site's uncanny presence. Whether carved by human hands or the patient chisel of tectonic forces, it forces us to confront how much of our past might lie drowned beneath the waves. And perhaps that's the real lesson here, not that we've found all the answers, but that the ocean, with its shifting tides and hidden depths, still guards secrets we're only beginning to fathom. Among the Yonaguni monument's most hotly debated features are the series of deep, straight grooves cutting across its stone surfaces, lines so precise they look like they were carved with tools rather than eroded by nature. These channels, some over a meter long and perfectly parallel, slice through the rock at sharp angles that defy the uneven wear patterns typically left by ocean currents. Proponents of the artificial origin theory point to these marks as smoking gun evidence, arguing that their geometric consistency mirrors known ancient stoneworking techniques. On the northern face of the monument, one particularly striking groove intersects another at a flawless 90-degree angle, forming a clean L shape that marine geologist Masaki Kimura insists could not occur without human intervention. But here's where the mystery deepens. Close examination reveals these grooves vary in depth and width, with some tapering off asymmetrically, details that don't align neatly with deliberate chiseling. Skeptics argue these could be stress fractures from tectonic activity, a common phenomenon in this earthquake-prone region. The monument's sandstone bedrock naturally splits along bedding planes, creating straight-line fractures that might mimic tool marks. Yet even critics concede one oddity. The grooves cluster heavily around what appear to be structural features, like the base of the terrace or the edges of the stair-like formations, as if reinforcing their shape. If purely natural, why would fractures concentrate so selectively? Adding fuel to the debate are circular depressions dotted across the monument's surfaces. Roughly the diameter of a human fist, these bowl-like indentations resemble the cup marks found at megalithic sites worldwide, from Scotland's Callanish stones to Peru's Sacsayhuamán. Some archaeologists suggest they could have held ritual offerings or served as pivot points for moving massive blocks. Others note their similarity to erosional pitting caused by swirling pebbles in tidal currents. But there's a catch. These pits often appear in deliberate-looking arrangements, like straight rows near the monument's entrance, a pattern rarely seen in natural formations. The most compelling evidence might lie in the monument's lesser-known underwater neighbor, a second, smaller structure dubbed the Turtle Stone for its carved reptilian likeness. Unlike the ambiguous grooves on the main monument, this feature displays unmistakable artistic intent. A stylized turtle outline with a clearly defined head, shell, and flippers, its lines too symmetrical to dismiss as random erosion. Marine archaeologists who have dived the site report tool marks around its edges, with chisel-like striations visible under magnification. If verified, this single artifact could tip the scales toward human craftsmanship, proving the monument wasn't just appropriated by ancient peoples but actively shaped by them. Yet the waters remain murky, without organic material like tool fragments or charcoal to carbon date. The case hinges on subjective interpretations of stone. The debate crystallizes a fundamental challenge in underwater archaeology: how to distinguish human artistry from nature's patient sculpting. Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing sides, but in embracing the ambiguity. Whether carved by hands or currents, the Yonaguni monument stands as a testament to the blurred line between natural wonder and human genius, a riddle that keeps us questioning, diving deeper, and marveling at how much history might still be hiding beneath the waves. Hidden away in museum vaults and private collections, the so-called crystal skulls have long tantalized explorers and conspiracy theorists alike. Smooth, lifelike carvings of human craniums rendered from flawless quartz, allegedly crafted by ancient Mesoamerican civilizations. The most famous, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, dazzles with its jaw-dropping detail, teeth that look ready to bite, cheekbones catching light like real flesh, and prism-like eye sockets that scatter rainbows when sunlight hits just right. For over a century, these artifacts were hailed as proof of lost advanced technologies, their origins shrouded in tales of jungle temples and mystic priests. But the truth behind their creation is far stranger than fiction, and the real mystery isn't who made them, but why we so desperately wanted them to be ancient. The skull's mythical status began crumbling in the 1990s when microscopic analysis revealed telltale marks of modern lapidary tools. High-powered magnification uncovered straight, mechanical grooves left by rotary wheels, a technology unavailable to the Maya or Aztecs. Even more damning, the quartz itself betrayed their age. Trace element testing showed the crystal originated in Madagascar or Brazil, with no evidence of pre-Columbian trade routes connecting these regions to Mesoamerica. By 2008, the British Museum and Smithsonian had confirmed the skulls were 19th-century fabrications, likely crafted in German workshops specializing in devotional objects. The smoking gun, a reference in a 1886 Paris auction catalogue to a rock crystal skull, purportedly Aztec, sold by art dealer Eugene Boban, a known purveyor of antiquities of questionable origin. Yet here's where the story twists. Even as their mythical origins were debunked, the skull's craftsmanship refused to be dismissed. Modern jewelers attempting to replicate them hit a wall, carving such precise features from single quartz blocks without fracturing the brittle crystal requires near superhuman skill. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, in particular, defies explanation. Unlike others with cloudy inclusions or visible seams, it's carved from impossibly clear rock crystal, with a detachable jaw that aligns seamlessly, a feat modern technology struggles to achieve without 3D mapping. How could 19th-century artisans working solely by hand produce something so flawless? Some researchers speculate they used ancient gem-cutting techniques rediscovered during Europe's lapidary renaissance, secrets passed down through guilds but lost to industrial automation. The skull's enduring allure speaks to something deeper than archaeology, our obsession with the idea of lost wisdom. Their supposed Mesoamerican origins tapped into 19th-century fascination with exotic civilizations, a colonial era craving for artifacts that proved the mystical East held secrets Europe had forgotten. Even today, their icy, impassive faces serve as blank screens for our projections. New Agers hail them as psychic batteries, conspiracy theorists brand them alien artifacts, and filmmakers spin tales of supernatural doom. Perhaps the greatest irony, the crystal skulls are fakes that became real relics not of ancient America, but of the Victorian era's tangled fantasies about the past. They remind us that every generation gets the mysteries it craves, and sometimes the most enchanting lies are the ones we choose to believe. The moment sunlight hits the Mitchell Hedges skull at just the right angle, something uncanny happens. Prisms hidden within its quartz structure fracture the light into radiant rainbows, casting shimmering patterns that dance across walls like spectral visions. It's this eerie optical phenomenon, perhaps more than anything else, that's fueled a century of wild claims about the crystal skull's supernatural powers. New Age devotees describe feeling waves of energy pulsing from the artifacts, reporting visions of ancient ceremonies or sudden flashes of healing warmth when touching their smooth surfaces. Some whisper the skulls are psychic archives, storing the memories and knowledge of lost civilizations, waiting to transmit their secrets to those attuned to their frequency. Others insist they're interdimensional communication devices or even Atlantean supercomputers, their flawless geometry designed to harness cosmic forces. But how much of this mysticism is traceable back to the skull's actual origins? The answer lies in a collision between Victorian showmanship and 20th century spiritualism. In the 1920s, adventurer F.A. Mitchell Hedges spun tales of discovering his namesake's skull in a Maya temple, a story later debunked by his own daughter, who admitted it was likely purchased at a London auction. Yet the skull's hypnotic beauty and alleged connection to Mesoamerican priests made it irresistible to early paranormal researchers. By the 1960s, psychic mediums claimed the artifacts could channel entities like Pan, a purported Atlantean elder during seances. Lab tests in the 1970s added fuel to the fire when technicians reported odd electromagnetic fluctuations near the skulls, though skeptics note these could have been caused by static electricity or nearby equipment. The most persistent legend involves the skull's purported healing properties. Wellness gurus tout them as crystalline amplifiers, capable of focusing human intention to mend ailments. Some alternative therapists place them near patients during energy work, swearing they accelerate recovery. Yet scientific studies have never validated these claims, and MRI scans show no unusual brain activity in subjects exposed to the skulls. What's truly fascinating isn't whether the skulls possess magic, it's why we're so determined to believe they do. Psychologists point to the placebo effect on steroids. When an object is visually striking and shrouded in exotic lore, our brains are primed to attribute extraordinary experiences to it. The skull's flawless surfaces become mirrors, reflecting our hunger for connection to something greater than the mundane. Even their debunking hasn't dimmed their allure. Modern artists and holographers have recreated the skull's light-bending tricks using laser-cut quartz, proving their most supernatural effects are replicable with enough precision. Yet pilgrims still flock to see them, drawn less by facts than by the stories we've grafted onto their glassy brows. Perhaps their real power was never mystical, but cultural, serving as blank canvases for every generation's dreams of hidden knowledge. In the end, the crystal skulls teach us an unexpected lesson. Sometimes the most potent magic lies not in the artifact but in our unwavering need to believe. Scattered across Costa Rica's dense jungles and misty river deltas, the stone spheres of Diquis seem almost too perfect to be the work of human hands. Ranging from the size of a bowling ball to colossal orbs over 2.5 meters in diameter and weighing up to 16 tons, these enigmatic artifacts number in the hundreds, each one carved with such geometric precision that modern engineers struggle to explain how they were achieved without metal tools or advanced measuring devices. Their surfaces, polished to a near-mirror finish, catch the tropical light like alien marbles dropped into the undergrowth, leaving archaeologists and visitors alike to wonder, who made these marvels and why would a civilization invest such staggering effort into shaping stone into near-flawless spheres? The most striking feature of these spheres isn't just their roundness, it's their consistency. Laser scans reveal deviations of less than 2 millimeters in diameter across even the largest specimens, a level of accuracy that rivals modern machine work. How did the Dikwis culture, which flourished between 800 and 1500 CE, pull this off? Researchers experimenting with traditional methods found that shaping spheres this precise requires more than patience. It demands a systematic understanding of geometry. Some theorize the artisans used a combination of controlled heating and cooling to fracture granite along natural fault lines, then painstakingly pecked away imperfections with hammerstones made of harder rock. Others point to the sphere's material gabbro, a coarse volcanic stone which may have been ground smooth using quartz sand as an abrasive, yet even these explanations leave gaps. Without compasses or calipers, how did the craftsmen ensure uniformity? One clue lies in unfinished spheres found near quarries, which show grooves and markings suggesting they were measured and adjusted using cord and peg techniques, similar to how shipbuilders laid out curved hulls. But the real mystery isn't the how, it's the why. Some spheres cluster in geometric arrangements, aligning with cardinal directions or solstice sunrises, hinting at astronomical or ceremonial purposes. At the archaeological site of Finca 6, several orbs form straight lines leading to what may have been elite residences, implying they functioned as status markers for powerful chiefs. Local legends add another layer, describing the spheres as shot put by the gods, or navigational aids for celestial visitors, stories that, while fanciful, reflect their awe-inspiring presence. The most compelling theory ties them to water. Many are found near rivers or tidal areas, and their polished surfaces may have symbolized droplets, linking them to rituals honoring fertility or rainfall. Then there's the unsettling question of relocation. Over half the known spheres have been moved from their original sites, some rolled into gardens or town squares by 20th century landowners. This displacement has erased critical context, leaving researchers to piece together patterns like detectives at a scattered crime scene. Recent LiDAR surveys have revealed hidden alignments beneath the jungle canopy, suggesting the spheres once formed part of larger cosmological landscapes, their placements mapping constellations or territorial boundaries. What lingers today is the haunting genius of these artifacts. Unlike pyramids or statues, their power lies in their simplicity, a shape so universal yet so difficult to perfect that it transcends time. Whether celestial calendars, symbols of authority, or sacred embodiments of nature's perfection, the stone spheres of Costa Rica challenge our assumptions about pre-Columbian societies. They whisper that precision and beauty weren't born from advanced technology, but from the relentless human drive to shape the world, one patient strike at a time. And as the jungle slowly reclaims them, they remain silent witnesses to a civilization that mastered stone in ways we're only beginning to fathom. Beneath the dense canopy of Costa Rica's rainforests, the stone spheres of Dikwis hold a secret written in the language of the cosmos. When researchers began mapping their original positions before many were rolled away by bulldozers or looted for decoration, they noticed something peculiar. Clusters of spheres seemed to mirror celestial patterns, their arrangements echoing the constellations visible to the Dikwis people over 1,000 years ago. At the El Silencio archaeological site, 7 spheres form a near-perfect arc, matching the curve of the Pleiades star cluster during the December solstice, a time linked to agricultural cycles in pre-Columbian traditions. Nearby, a trio of orbs aligns with Orion's belt, its orientation corresponding to the constellation's position at dawn during planting season. These aren't random placements, they're a stone and stellar code carved into the earth by a culture that saw the sky as sacred scripture. Yet the celestial theory comes with a caveat as heavy as the spheres themselves. Over half were displaced from their original sites. In the 1930s, banana plantation workers used heavy machinery to drag them into rows for decoration, unwittingly scrambling their ancient alignments. Modern attempts to reconstruct their astronomical significance rely on fragmentary records and educated guesses, like trying to solve a star chart with half the pieces missing. Some researchers argue the remaining clusters still hold clues. At Batambul, 4 spheres form a right angle pointing toward the sunrise on the equinox, while in the Pommer Sur Valley, a line of orbs leads directly to a hilltop where Venus would have risen during its 8-year cycle. Even displaced, their silent testimony suggests the Dikwis didn't just observe the heavens, they mapped them in stone, turning the jungle floor into an observatory without walls. But skeptics counter that nature loves repetition. The same mathematical ratios found in star patterns also emerge in river bends or tree spacing. Could the alignments be coincidental? Without precise pre-disturbance surveys, it's impossible to know for certain. However, metallurgist and archaeoastronomer Anthony Aveney notes that the sphere's material adds weight to the cosmic connection. The gabbro rock they're carved from contains flecks of magnetite, a mineral sensitive to Earth's magnetic fields. Some spheres, when tested, show slight magnetic anomalies at points corresponding to celestial alignments, hinting that their creators may have deliberately selected stones that resonated with cosmic forces. The most compelling evidence might come from the sphere's imperfections. Laser scans reveal subtle flattening on certain orbs, as if they were deliberately slightly distorted to correct their alignment when viewed from specific vantage points, an ancient equivalent of calibrating a telescope lens. Meanwhile, indigenous Bribri oral traditions speak of the spheres as Tara's tears, dropped by the god of thunder to mark portals where the earthly and celestial realms touch. Whether star maps, ritual gateways, or both, these stone spheres challenge us to see them not as isolated artifacts, but as pieces of a vast, invisible puzzle, one where the sky above and the earth below were threads in the same sacred tapestry. And as archaeologists slowly peel back the layers of disturbance, the fragments of that tapestry whisper a tantalizing truth. Sometimes the past doesn't just lie beneath our feet. It's written in the stars. Amid the fragile parchment of the Dead Sea Scrolls, one artifact stands apart, not for its spiritual wisdom, but for its cold, cryptic inventory of buried riches. Known as the Copper Scroll, this 2,000-year-old document lists 64 hiding places where staggering quantities of gold, silver, and sacred vessels were supposedly stashed across the Judean wilderness. Unlike the other scrolls inscribed with religious texts on leather or papyrus, this one was etched onto thin sheets of copper, a deliberate choice that hints at its urgency. Why go to such lengths to preserve a treasure map, and why has none of its promised wealth ever been recovered? The answers might rewrite our understanding of ancient Jerusalem's final, desperate hours. The scroll's contents read like a thriller's plot. In the ruin that is in the valley of Achor, beneath the steps leading to the east, 40 talents of silver. Another entry directs seekers to the cistern of the Temple Mount where the wooden chest lies. The quantities are staggering: over 4,600 talents of precious metals, worth billions in today's currency. But here's the twist: every excavation effort has come up empty. Some archaeologists argue the treasures were looted long ago, perhaps by Roman soldiers who ransacked Jerusalem in 70 CE. Others propose the metals were melted down during revolts, their original forms lost to time. Yet a radical theory gaining traction suggests the scroll was never meant to be taken literally, that its treasures were symbolic, listing sacred objects too dangerous to describe openly during Roman persecution. What truly sets the Copper Scroll apart is its bizarre language. While other Dead Sea Scrolls flow with poetic Hebrew, this one stumps scholars with its choppy, telegraphic style, more like a hurried scribble than sacred text. Odd Greek loanwords pepper the descriptions, and the grammar suggests the author wasn't a native Hebrew speaker. Could it have been dictated by a Roman informant? Or written under duress by a priest trying to encrypt the temple's wealth before legions arrived? The copper itself adds another layer of intrigue. Unlike organic scrolls preserved by the dry Dead Sea climate, metal would have corroded in moisture. Some researchers believe it was meant to endure beyond leather's lifespan, a message for future generations rather than contemporary use. the most tantalizing clue lies in the scroll's final lines. A copy of this document was placed in the pit next to the washing pool. This implies a second, possibly more detailed version still waiting to be found. Modern teams using ground-penetrating radar have scanned proposed sites, from the caves of Qumran to tunnels beneath Jerusalem's Old City. But the land guards its secrets fiercely. Perhaps the copper scroll's real treasure isn't gold, it's the unresolved question hanging over every failed dig. Were these instructions for reclaiming sacred relics after the war an elaborate hoax or a spiritual allegory about wealth's fleeting nature, cast in metal to outlast empires? Until someone strikes literal pay dirt, the copper scroll remains archaeology's most alluring dead end, a whispered promise of riches just beyond reach, teasing us across 2 millennia. For over 70 years, the copper scroll's tantalizing riddles have sent treasure hunters and archaeologists scrambling into the deserts and ruins of the Middle East, armed with shovels, ground-penetrating radar, and unwavering hope. One of the most dramatic quests began in 1952, just 4 years after the scroll's discovery, when a French archaeologist named John Allegro led an expedition to the cave of the column near Qumran. Convinced the phrase, "in the salt pit that is under the steps," referred to a hidden chamber beneath the cave's entrance. His team dynamited sections of the cliff face, uncovering nothing but collapsed tunnels and shattered hopes. Allegro's obsession grew so intense that he later claimed to have decoded the scroll's true meaning, that it led to the lost treasures of the Jerusalem temple, smuggled out before the Roman siege. His theories, dismissed as fringe even then, sparked a wave of unauthorized digs that left ancient sites pockmarked with craters. The 90s brought a more scientific approach. Using advanced spectroscopy, researchers from the University of Chicago analyzed copper samples from the scroll, tracing their origin to Cyprus, proof the metal itself was imported, likely at great expense. This revelation reignited interest in the scroll's authenticity. Why would someone go to such lengths to fabricate a treasure map? In 2006, a team from the Hebrew University tunneled beneath Jerusalem's Old City, following the scroll's clue about the gutters of the Temple Mount drain. They uncovered Byzantine-era coins and pottery, but no silver talents or golden vessels. The real shock came when radar scans revealed an unnatural void beneath the drainage channel, a chamber just large enough to hold the described chests. Yet political tensions halted further excavation, leaving the mystery tantalizingly unresolved. Then came the wild card, amateur sleuth Jim Barfield, a retired firefighter who spent a decade cross-referencing the scroll's clues with old land surveys. He zeroed in on a nondescript hill near the Dead Sea, where ground scans showed metallic anomalies matching the scroll's descriptions. Funded by a reality TV show, Barfield's team drilled core samples in 2016, only to hit a thick layer of bitumen, a tar-like substance ancient Jews used to seal precious objects. The media frenzy that followed collapsed when lab tests dated the bitumen to the Bronze Age, centuries before the scroll was written. Another dead end, or was it? Barfield insists the bitumen could have been repurposed, and the hunt continues. Meanwhile, scholars like Dr. Judah Lander propose an audacious alternative. The treasures weren't hidden to protect them from the Romans, but from Jewish zealots. During the First Jewish Revolt, radical factions plundered the temple's wealth to fund their war. Lander argues the copper scroll was a covert inventory, stashed by priests loyal to Rome to prevent sacred relics from being melted into coins for rebellion. If true, the treasure might have been found long ago not by modern explorers, but by Roman officials quietly returning it to Jerusalem's rebuilt temple before its final destruction. The latest chapter unfolded in 2021, when AI algorithms parsed the scroll's cryptic phrasing for geographic patterns, flagging a previously overlooked valley near Jericho. Drones equipped with multispectral cameras spotted unnatural stone alignments matching the scroll's descriptions of marker cairns. Excavations are pending, but already, skeptics note the valley was thoroughly picked over by Bedouin tribes centuries ago. What keeps drawing generations back to this elusive hunt? Perhaps it's the scroll's brutal honesty. Unlike mythic treasures like El Dorado, the copper scroll doesn't speak in riddles. It gives exact measurements, landmarks, and quantities. Its stark realism makes failure feel personal. Every empty hole, every fruitless scan whispers the same haunting question. Are we misreading the map, or is the treasure simply gone, vanished into history's fog, leaving only copper and speculation behind? The answer may lie not in the earth, but in accepting that some mysteries refuse to surrender their secrets, no matter how fiercely we dig. Scattered across the misty highlands of northern Laos, the plain of jars stretches for miles, a surreal landscape dotted with thousands of massive stone vessels, some standing taller than a person and weighing several tons. Carved from sandstone, granite, and limestone, these ancient jars lie in clusters of a few dozen to hundreds, their origins lost to time. The largest weigh as much as small cars, their rough-hewn surfaces pocked with lichen and weather stains, yet their cylindrical forms remain strikingly uniform. Who dragged these megaliths here centuries ago, and what purpose did they serve? The answers are as elusive as the morning fog that clings to these highland plains. Local legends whisper that the jars were crafted by giants to brew rice wine for a victorious king, while others claim they stored monsoon rainwater for passing armies. Archaeologists propose more pragmatic theories. The jars likely served as funeral urns or burial crypts, holding human remains or grave goods. Excavations have uncovered fragments of bone, ceramics, and iron tools buried near or inside the jars, supporting their use in mortuary rites. Some researchers suggest they might have doubled as food storage vessels during large communal feasts, their sheer size accommodating provisions for entire villages. But here's the puzzle. Why are they scattered so unevenly across the landscape, with no clear pattern to their placement? The mystery deepens when you examine the jar's construction. Without metal tools, how did ancient craftsmen hollow out such enormous blocks of stone? Some show precise interior smoothing, suggesting a technique far more advanced than simple chiseling. Even more baffling are the stone discs found nearby, some carved with human or animal figures, possibly lids or markers for the jars. Yet no two discs are alike, and their symbolism remains cryptic. Recent surveys using ground-penetrating radar have revealed hidden burial pits and artifacts beneath the soil, hinting that the jars are just the visible tip of a much larger ceremonial complex. Then there's the enigma of their dispersal. The jars aren't confined to one area. They sprawl across hundreds of square miles, with similar vessels found as far away as India and Indonesia. Were these the work of a single culture, or evidence of a shared tradition across ancient Southeast Asia? The answer may lie in the trade routes that once crisscrossed these highlands, connecting distant communities. Or perhaps the jars mark the migration paths of a people who carried their burial customs with them. Adding to the intrigue is the shadow of modern history. Many jar sites remain inaccessible due to unexploded ordnance from the Vietnam War, leaving vast areas unexplored. In recent years, clearance efforts have uncovered new jars, some adorned with carvings unlike any seen before. Each discovery peels back another layer of the mystery, challenging assumptions about the region's prehistoric past. Standing beside these ancient vessels, you can't help but feel the weight of unanswered questions. Were they memorials for the dead, vessels for the living, or something in between? The plain of jars refuses to give up its secrets easily, reminding us that some of history's most enduring riddles aren't found in grand temples or gold-laden tombs, but in the quiet persistence of stone waiting, silent and full of stories we've yet to hear. The jars of Laos's Plain of Jars aren't just mysterious for their purpose, they defy logic in their very creation. Scattered across the rugged highlands, these monumental vessels were carved from some of the hardest stones on Earth: granite, sandstone, and limestone, yet archaeologists have found no trace of the tools used to shape them, nor the quarries where their raw materials were extracted. It's as if the jars simply appeared fully formed, with no evidence of the painstaking labor that must have gone into their construction. Consider the logistics. To hollow out a single 3-ton jar from solid rock, ancient artisans would have needed specialized chisels, abrasives, and possibly even heat-based fracturing techniques. Yet no metal tools from the relevant period, estimated between 500 BCE and 500 CE, have been discovered in the region. The few stone tools found nearby, basic hammers and grinding stones, are woefully inadequate for precision work on this scale. Even more perplexing is the absence of quarry sites. Unlike Egypt's Aswan quarries or Peru's Cuzco stoneworks, where discarded blocks and tool marks litter the landscape, Laos's jar sites show no such leftovers. The nearest viable sandstone deposits lie miles away across treacherous terrain. How were these megaliths transported without wheels, draft animals, or even durable ropes capable of bearing such weight? One theory points to an ingenious workaround. The jars might have been carved in situ from boulders already scattered across the plain. Laser scans of unfinished jars reveal they were often shaped by pecking, repeatedly striking the surface with harder stones to gradually wear it down, a technique requiring generations of labor. But this raises another question: why choose such an impractical method? Some researchers suggest the jars' locations weren't arbitrary but ritually significant, tied to ancestral spirits or natural energy lines. The effort to carve them precisely where they stand, rather than in convenient quarries, hints at a deeper ceremonial purpose. Then there's the puzzle of uniformity. Despite being carved over centuries by different hands, the jars share uncanny similarities in proportion and design. Their cylindrical shapes, flared rims, and consistent height-to-width ratios suggest a standardized template, something highly unusual in prehistoric cultures without written records or centralized governance. Were these vessels copied from an older, lost prototype? Did a master artisan's technique endure through oral tradition? Or is there a more practical explanation, like using woven baskets as molds for plaster casts to guide carving? The most tantalizing clue might lie in the jar's imperfections. Close inspection reveals subtle tool marks that change style jar to jar. Some show broad, sweeping strikes, others fine, concentric grooves. This variability implies multiple schools of craftsmanship, possibly from different eras or cultural groups, yet all seem to have adhered to the same overarching vision. It's as if the plain became a collaborative project across generations, with each community adding their own jars to a growing tapestry of stone. What truly baffles archaeologists isn't just the how of the jar's creation, but the why behind such relentless effort. In a region where resources were scarce and survival demanding, why devote centuries to carving vessels with no obvious utilitarian function? Perhaps the answer lies not in the jars themselves, but in the act of making them, a communal ritual so vital, so woven into the fabric of identity, that the labor became its own reward. The absence of tools and quarries isn't an oversight. It's a silent testament to a culture that left no monuments to their methods, only the fruits of their devotion. And in that silence, the jars whisper their loudest mystery. Sometimes the greatest works of humanity are those that leave no trail at all. Weighing as much as a full-grown man and stretching nearly 3 feet in length, the Codex Gigas, better known as the Devil's Bible, looms over medieval history with an aura of dark legend. This colossal manuscript, crafted in early 13th century Bohemia, contains the complete Vulgate Bible alongside an unsettling assortment of texts ranging from medical cures to exorcism rites. But it's not the book's size that sparks unease. It's the chilling full-page portrait of the devil himself, glaring from folio 290 with blood-red claws and a leering grin, directly opposite a depiction of the heavenly city. This jarring juxtaposition fuels the book's infamous backstory, that a doomed monk sentenced to be walled alive for breaking his vows promised to create the world's most magnificent manuscript in a single night with Satan's help. The legend insists supernatural forces guided the monk's hand, explaining the codex's eerie uniformity. Despite its massive size, 310 parchment leaves made from the skins of 160 donkeys, the handwriting remains startlingly consistent, as if penned without pause. Modern forensic analysis reveals no signs of aging or tremor in the ink, suggesting the scribe worked with uncanny focus. Yet the real mystery lies in the pages torn from the manuscript, 8 missing folios removed with such precision that only faint stitching marks remain. Medievalists suspect these contain the Rule of Saint Benedict, a monastic guide the blasphemous scribe may have deliberately excised, but the Devil's Bible harbors darker quirks beyond omissions. Infrared scans reveal palimpsest layers of scrubbed text beneath the visible writing, including distorted prayers and inverted psalms that some researchers interpret as hidden curses. The book's very structure unsettles. While most medieval Bibles place the Old and New Testaments in harmonious sequence, this codex sandwiches them between occult calendars and Hebrew incantations, as if the sacred and profane were forced into uneasy alliance. Even the devil's portrait defies convention, unlike typical medieval depictions showing Satan bound or defeated. This version stares triumphantly at the viewer, his form dominating the page like a patron saint of heresy. Historians offer a tamer explanation. The codex was likely a collaborative effort by an entire monastery. It's an overnight origin myth concocted to explain the unnatural uniformity of its script. The devil illustration, they argue, served as a standard memento mori, a reminder of sin's consequences. Yet the manuscript's troubled history resists rationalization. After surviving fires, thefts, and wars, it was seized as spoils by Swedish troops in 1648, where legend says the wagon carrying it collapsed, killing 2 men. Today, the Devil's Bible rests under glass in Stockholm's National Library, its secrets still simmering beneath the surface. Whether divine punishment or human hubris, it remains a paradox, a sacred text haunted by the very darkness it was meant to condemn, proving that some stories refuse to be bound by the pages that hold them. The Devil's Bible didn't just earn its name from its eerie illustrations, it carved its infamy through centuries of violence, fire, and whispered curses. After its creation in the Bohemian monastery of Podlages, the codex vanished during the chaos of the Hussite Wars in the 15th century, only to resurface in the hands of Emperor Rudolf II, a ruler obsessed with the occult. His fascination with dark arts cast a shadow over the manuscript, fueling rumors that its devilish portrait had somehow ensnared its owners. When Rudolf's court collapsed, the book was looted by Swedish troops during the 30 Years' War, a theft that allegedly claimed lives. According to soldier diaries, the wagon transporting the codex to Stockholm mysteriously overturned, crushing 2 men beneath its weight. Coincidence? Maybe, but the misfortunes didn't stop there. Once housed in Queen Christina's library, the manuscript survived a devastating fire in 1697 that reduced thousands of texts to ash. Flames licked the edges of its vellum pages, yet the Devil's Bible emerged unscathed, an eerie resilience that only deepened its sinister reputation. Later, when a nobleman attempted to donate it to a German monastery, the abbot refused, citing ill omens after several monks fell gravely ill following its arrival. Even its modern guardians haven't escaped suspicion. In 1970, a curator at Stockholm's National Library reportedly suffered recurring nightmares of the devil's portrait breathing until the book was moved to a sealed display case. The most chilling chapter unfolded in 2007, when infrared scans revealed hidden markings beneath the devil's image, faint, looping symbols resembling inverted crosses, and what some cryptographers believe are coded pleas for forgiveness. Were these the desperate scratches of the doomed monk from legend, or something far older? Forensic analysis confirmed the symbols weren't added later. They'd been etched into the parchment before the infamous illustration was inked over them. This palimpsest of the damned suggests the artist knew exactly what they were concealing, a secret layered beneath layers of time and terror. Today, the Codex Gigas rests under bulletproof glass, its pages too fragile to touch. Yet visitors still swear the air around it feels unnaturally cold, and library staff rotate shifts to avoid prolonged exposure to its display. Whether cursed or merely coincidence-prone, the Devil's Bible endures as a paradox, a sacred text that refuses to die, yet refuses to let its keepers rest easy. Its history whispers a warning: some books aren't just written, they're bargains, and the price of their survival might still be coming due. Stretching across the windswept coast of Brittany, France, the Karnak stones stand in eerie, regimented rows like a petrified army frozen mid-march. With over 3,000 megaliths arranged in parallel lines spanning nearly 4 kilometers, this Neolithic spectacle dwarfs Stonehenge in both scale and mystery. The largest stones loom 4 meters high, their weathered surfaces pitted by millennia of salt and storm, while the smallest, no taller than a kitchen stool, form intricate geometric patterns that seem to pulse with hidden logic when viewed from above. Who orchestrated this granite symphony, and what urgent message were they trying to carve into the landscape? The theories are as varied as the stones themselves, each one a puzzle piece in humanity's oldest unsolved story. Astronomers first noticed the Karnak alignments weren't random when they traced the rows toward the horizon at sunrise during the summer solstice. Certain key stones cast dramatic shadows that bisect the formations precisely on these celestial dates, suggesting the site might have functioned as a colossal calendar. But the real revelation came when seismologists studied the local geology. Brittany sits atop a network of active fault lines, and experiments revealed something astonishing. The stones resonate at frequencies that amplify underground vibrations. When struck with a mallet, the megaliths produce low-frequency tones detectable up to a kilometer away. Could these have served as primitive earthquake detectors, their resonant hum warning ancient communities of impending tremors? The hypothesis gains traction when you consider the legends still whispered in Breton villages, tales of the stones singing before disasters, yet not all researchers are convinced. Archaeologists point to the Kurleskan alignment, where stones abruptly change height in rhythmic sequences that mirror wave patterns. This has led some to propose the rows were a tactile teaching tool, with each stone's size and position encoding navigational knowledge for early mariners. Others highlight the clusters of carvings found on certain menhirs, cup marks, and serpentine grooves that align with constellations only visible during specific lunar phases. The most haunting markings appear on the Giant of Manio, a 4-meter-tall sentinel stone covered in zigzagging channels that may have funneled rainwater for rituals or blood during sacrifices. What makes Karnak uniquely perplexing is the sheer multiplicity of its potential functions. Unlike single-purpose sites like burial dolmens or solstice markers, these stones seem to wear many hats: part observatory, part seismic alarm, part ceremonial space. Recent LiDAR scans have only deepened the enigma, revealing subterranean chambers and buried stone circles connecting the visible rows into a vast subterranean network. Some believe the entire complex maps the cosmos above, with each alignment mirroring a star cluster in the Milky Way. Others argue the stones trace the migratory paths of prehistoric herds, their placement calibrated to seasonal animal movements. Local folklore offers a darker lens. Breton legends speak of Saint Corneille, a persecuted pope said to have turned an advancing Roman legion to stone with a single glance. The rows, according to this myth, are frozen soldiers forever marching toward their doom. While charming, the tale fails to explain why identical megalithic systems appear as far away as India and Ethiopia, unless we consider the unsettling possibility that Karnak wasn't an isolated phenomenon, but part of a global Neolithic language we've yet to decipher. Walking among these stones today, you don't just see history, you feel it. The way the light slants through the rows at dawn, casting elongated shadows that seem to ripple like water. The electric prickle on your skin when the wind hums through their weathered edges. Karnak refuses to be pinned down by any single theory because its true power lies in its ambiguity. It's a reminder that the past isn't a closed book, but an ongoing conversation, one where the stones themselves are the only surviving witnesses, and they're not done speaking yet. Among the rolling hills of Brittany, where the Karnak stones march silently toward the sea, local legends whisper of builders who are anything but ordinary. Folktales passed down through generations claim these towering megaliths were erected by giants, beings of unimaginable strength who could lift boulders as if they were pebbles. One story tells of the sorcerer Merlin himself striding across the landscape, his magic shrinking the stones to manageable sizes before they returned to their true, colossal forms once placed. Another speaks of the Roman army, cursed by a wrathful saint and turned to stone where they stood, their ranks forever frozen in formation. But why would myth so consistently reach for non-human explanations when history offers simpler answers? The truth might lie in the sheer impossibility of the task as seen through premodern eyes. Imagine a medieval farmer stumbling upon these alignments, no memory of their construction, no context for their purpose. The stones, some weighing upward of 50 tons, would have dwarfed any contemporary structures. With no knowledge of Neolithic engineering, how could locals conceive of ordinary humans quarrying, transporting, and positioning such monoliths? Giants became the default explanation, a narrative shorthand for the incomprehensible. Even today, standing beside the tallest menhirs, it's hard not to feel a flicker of awe at the implied labor. Archaeology tells us the stones were likely moved using wooden sledges and earthen ramps, their placement tied to solstice alignments. But for centuries, the absence of written records left a vacuum easily filled by tales of supernatural intervention. Roman involvement is another persistent thread in local lore. Brittany's history with Rome is well documented. Caesar's legions marched through these lands, leaving roads and ruins in their wake. Yet the Karnak stones predate Roman occupation by at least 2,000 years. So why the connection? Some historians suggest the megaliths' orderly rows reminded medieval observers of military discipline, their rigid formations evoking the precision of Rome's armies. Others point to the Christianization of pagan sites. By attributing the stones to Roman punishment like the Saint Corneli legend, the Church could repurpose them as morality tales. The message was clear: defy divine will, and even conquerors could be reduced to silent, stony sentinels. But beneath these myths lies a kernel of cultural memory. The giants of Breton folklore often bear names derived from ancient Celtic deities, hinting at distant recollections of the stone's original builders. The Romans, meanwhile, may have encountered the megaliths already shrouded in mystery, their own interpretations layering atop older oral traditions. In this light, the legends aren't just fanciful stories, they're palimpsests of history, each generation imprinting its own understanding onto the stones. Modern science may have replaced giants with glaciers and armies with agrarian societies, but the essence of the mystery endures. The Karnak stones resist simple categorization, inviting us to wonder not just who built them, but why we've always needed them to be the work of forces greater than ourselves. Perhaps the most poignant clue comes from a lesser-known tale told in the village of Plowhonnell. It speaks of a grieving giantess who erected the stones as a memorial to her human lover. Each men hear a tear shed for a mortal life too brief. In this version, the builders aren't fearsome or cursed, just heartsick, aching to leave a mark that outlasts time. And in a way, that's the most human explanation of all. Whether raised by Neolithic farmers or mourners from myth, the stones stand as monuments to a universal impulse, to reach beyond our limits, to grip the earth and whisper, "We were here." The legends, like the megaliths, are anchors tying us to a past that remains just out of reach, yet forever underfoot. Buried beneath the fertile soil of Romania's Tartaria region, 3 small clay tablets ignited one of archaeology's most heated debates when they were unearthed in 1961. Roughly the size of palm-sized tiles, these unassuming artifacts bear strange symbols, zigzags, crosses, and spirals arranged in deliberate-looking rows. To the excavators who first brushed the dirt from their surfaces, the markings resembled something revolutionary, the world's oldest known writing system, predating Mesopotamian cuneiform by over 2,000 years. But are these truly the remnants of a lost script from 5300 BCE, or just the random doodles of a Neolithic artist? The divide between believers and skeptics cuts to the very heart of how we define human communication. Proponents of the writing theory point to the tablet's startling sophistication. The symbols cluster in repeated sequences, much like early Sumerian administrative tablets used for record-keeping. One particularly compelling section shows a spiral followed by a series of branching lines, a pattern that recurs on multiple tablets, suggesting it might represent a name, deity, or calendar marker. Even more intriguing, the tablets were found alongside charred bones in what appears to be a ritual pit, hinting they held ceremonial significance beyond mere decoration. If these symbols constitute writing, they'd rewrite history, proving that the Danube Valley civilization rivaled ancient Mesopotamia in intellectual achievement. Detractors counter with a simpler explanation. The marks are nothing more than ownership notches or decorative motifs. They highlight similar symbols found on pottery fragments across Neolithic Europe, patterns that, while orderly, show no evidence of encoding language. The archaeologist who first championed the tablet's linguistic significance, Nicolae Vlasa, noted they'd been fired at low temperatures, making them unlikely candidates for permanent records. Skeptics argue that true writing requires context lists, ledgers, or repetitive texts, not isolated symbols. No matter how neatly arranged, without a Rosetta Stone to decode them, the Tartaria markings remain tantalizingly ambiguous. Recent technological advances have only deepened the mystery. High-resolution 3D scans reveal microscopic tool marks indicating the symbols were incised when the clay was leather-hard, not merely scratched post-firing. This level of intentionality suggests deliberation beyond idle etching. Meanwhile, statistical analyses of symbol frequencies show patterns resembling those in undeciphered scripts like Vinča symbols from neighboring Serbia. Yet the clincher, proof of grammatical structure, remains elusive. The tablet's most vocal advocate, linguist Marius Alexianu, proposes they might represent a proto-writing system, bridging pictorial symbols and full-fledged script. Imagine a prehistoric shopping list where a zigzag means grain and a circle means sun, with no syntax to connect them. What makes the Tartaria tablets so divisive isn't just the question of their purpose, it's what they represent about human progress. If they're writing, our timeline of civilization's dawn crumbles. Suddenly, a forgotten culture on Europe's fringes becomes a pioneer of intellectual history. But if they're not, they stand as a testament to how easily we project meaning onto the past, desperate to find order in the random. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the clay itself, waiting for the right eyes to see beyond the scratches and glimpse the moment when humanity first tried to press thought into earth, whether as prayer, poetry, or something in between. Until then, these tiny tablets hold a power far beyond their size, the weight of a question that could reshape history. The debate over the Tartaria tablets hinges on a radical idea, that writing didn't emerge in a single cradle of civilization, but flickered to life independently across the ancient world. Imagine a Neolithic artisan in what's now Romania pressing a stylus into wet clay 5,300 years before the Common Era, encoding symbols that might represent the first sparks of European literacy. Proponents of this theory highlight the tablet's striking resemblance to later writing systems. The zigzags and spirals cluster in repetitive sequences, much like early Sumerian cuneiforms accounting marks. One recurring motif, a comb-like symbol, bears an uncanny similarity to Proto-Elamite script from Iran, raising the tantalizing possibility of a lost network of symbolic communication stretching across prehistoric Eurasia. Could these humble clay fragments be the missing link between abstract art and true writing? Critics, however, slash through these connections with a simple rebuttal: correlation isn't causation. They argue the tablets lack the telltale hallmarks of linguistic systems, like consistent directional flow or context-dependent variations. While cuneiform evolved to log quantities of barley and temple offerings, the Tartaria symbols show no clear ties to inventory or administration. The excavation site offers no ledgers, no duplicates, just 3 isolated tablets buried alongside charred bones, suggesting a ritual purpose rather than bureaucratic record-keeping. Even the symbol's precision cuts both ways. Their neat rows might reflect an aesthetic preference for order, not encoded speech. Without a bilingual artifact or a longer text to compare, the tablets remain trapped in a scholarly limbo, too structured to dismiss as doodles, too sparse to crown as script. Yet new research refuses to let the mystery rest. Computational linguists recently fed the symbols into pattern recognition algorithms designed to detect writing systems. The results: the sequences scored higher for linguistic likelihood than decorative motifs but fell short of definitive proof. Meanwhile, archaeochemists made a breakthrough analyzing the tablet's clay source. Trace minerals match deposits near the Vinča culture's heartland in Serbia, where similar symbols appear on pottery. This fuels an explosive theory. The Tartaria tablets might represent a regional, symbolic dialect shared among Neolithic groups for ceremonial or trade purposes. Picture itinerant priests or merchants carrying these glyphs across the Danube Valley, their meanings fluid but mutually intelligible, a prehistoric emoji system etched in clay. The most provocative perspective comes from anthropologists studying non-literate cultures. They note that the tablet's symbols align with proto-writing systems observed in indigenous groups, where standardized marks convey concepts without grammar. The Yukagir of Siberia, for instance, used carved notches to map hunting territories and genealogies. If the Tartaria artifacts operated similarly, they might not fit strict definitions of writing, but they'd still represent a quantum leap in cognitive abstraction, a bridge between pictograms and true language. What lingers isn't just academic rivalry, but a deeper question about how knowledge crystallizes. The tablets force us to reckon with the messy, nonlinear path of human innovation. Perhaps writing wasn't invented in a flash of genius, but simmered for millennia in half-formed symbols, pressed into clay by hands groping toward a revolution they'd never lived to see. Until more fragments surface from Romania's soil, these enigmatic tablets will remain both a beacon and a Rorschach test, inviting us to project our hopes for the past onto their silent, scarred surfaces. Nestled in the quiet town of Visoko, just northwest of Sarajevo, a cluster of hills has sparked one of the most contentious debates in modern archaeology, the so-called Bosnian pyramids. At first glance, these landforms resemble typical symmetrical hills covered in dense vegetation. But in 2005, entrepreneur Semir Osmanagic made a bombshell claim. These weren't hills at all, but ancient pyramids constructed by a lost civilization with technology far beyond anything known to history. His assertion sent shockwaves through both academia and the world of alternative archaeology, drawing fervent believers and vehement skeptics into a battle over truth, interpretation, and the very nature of evidence. Osmanagic's team pointed to the hills striking geometric angles, asserting they were too precise to be natural. They excavated what they called paved terraces and tunnel networks, claiming to find man-made concrete blocks and mysterious energy anomalies deep underground. Most provocatively, they alleged the largest hill, dubbed the Pyramid of the Sun, aligned with cardinal directions and emitted unexplained electromagnetic beams, proof, they argued, of advanced ancient engineering. The claims ricocheted through media outlets, with headlines declaring Europe's first pyramids had been found, overshadowing the chorus of scientific dissent. Geologists, however, tell a radically different story. Core samples and satellite imaging reveal the hills are natural formations, shaped by millions of years of tectonic uplift and erosion. The paved terraces, likely medieval farming structures or sandstone bedding plains fractured by seismic activity. The tunnels, prehistoric caves or medieval mining shafts, later repurposed as bomb shelters during the Bosnian War. As for the famed energy beams, mainstream researchers dismiss them as misinterpreted readings from underground water flows or mineral deposits. The European Association of Archaeologists even issued a scathing rebuke, calling the project a cruel hoax that distracts from Bosnia's real cultural heritage. Yet the controversy refuses to die. Why? Because the Bosnian pyramids tap into deeper questions about who gets to define the past. For skeptics, the project is a textbook case of pseudo-archaeology cherry-picking data to fit a sensational narrative. But for supporters, it represents a challenge to institutional gatekeeping, a David and Goliath struggle against an academic elite they accuse of dismissing unconventional ideas too quickly. The tunnels beneath Visoko have become a pilgrimage site for thousands, drawn by stories of healing energies and hidden chambers. Whether real or imagined, the pyramids have undeniably reshaped the town's identity, blending tourism, nationalism, and New Age mysticism into an unstoppable cultural force. What makes this debate so fascinating isn't just the clash of evidence, but what it reveals about our relationship with history. Are we projecting our desires onto the landscape, willing mysteries into existence, or could there be fragments of truth buried beneath the hype? The Bosnian pyramids may never be universally accepted as man-made, but their legacy endures as a mirror, reflecting our endless hunger to uncover lost worlds even when they might not exist. Beneath the lush greenery of Visoko's hills, explorers claim to have stumbled upon something far stranger than ancient masonry, alleged energy anomalies that defy conventional explanation. Deep within the labyrinth of Ravni Tunnel, a subterranean network beneath the so-called Pyramid of the Sun, visitors report eerie phenomena, compasses spinning wildly, electronic devices malfunctioning, and an unsettling hum that seems to vibrate through the bedrock. Teams using Geiger counters and electromagnetic field detectors have logged inexplicable spikes in radiation and energy readings, particularly near intersections of the tunnels or beneath certain stone monoliths dubbed energy blocks. These observations have fueled wild theories. Could these tunnels be part of an ancient power grid, or perhaps a resonant chamber designed to amplify unseen forces? The most persistent claim centers on the tunnel's purported healing properties. Visitors describe sudden surges of well-being, reduced pain, or heightened mental clarity after spending time in specific chambers. One Austrian research team even documented a drastic drop in airborne bacteria levels in certain tunnel sections, likening the effect to a natural sanitization system. Proponents argue the tunnel's high concentrations of negative ions molecules linked to improved mood and respiratory health might explain these effects. Others go further, suggesting the tunnel's geometry aligns with sacred ratios or earth energies, turning them into conduits for some forgotten technology. Skeptics, however, counter that these experiences could stem from the placebo effect, heightened by the site's mystical reputation and the oppressive, oxygen-rich atmosphere of the enclosed spaces. Then there's the sonic mystery. In 2018, a team of acousticians from Zagreb University recorded low-frequency vibrations resonating through the tunnels at a steady 7.83 Hz, a frequency some call the Earth's heartbeat, due to its similarity to the planet's natural electromagnetic resonance. This so-called Schumann resonance has been theorized to influence human brainwaves, potentially inducing meditative states. Was this an intentional feature of the tunnel's design, or just a geological coincidence? Mainstream geologists point out that such frequencies are common in subterranean environments with water flows and mineral deposits. But believers highlight the precision of the tunnel's construction, their smooth, angled walls and baffle-like chambers that seem engineered to manipulate sound. Critics dismiss these claims as cherry-picked data, arguing that fringe researchers ignore contradictory evidence. For every energy hotspot, there are stretches of tunnel with entirely normal readings. The healing effects, they argue, are subjective and unrepeatable in controlled studies. Even the famed negative ion concentrations, while higher than surface levels, fall within typical ranges for underground limestone formations. Yet the allure persists, buoyed by anecdotal accounts and the tantalizing possibility that these hills, pyramids or not, might still hold secrets our instruments can't fully decipher. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of this debate isn't the science, but the psychology behind it. The Bosnian pyramids have become a Rorschach test for our collective yearning to believe in hidden wonders. Whether through geological quirks or human ingenuity, these tunnels emit something undeniably potent, not just vibrations or ions, but a magnetic pull on the imagination. They challenge us to ask whether ancient builders could have harnessed forces we're only beginning to understand, or if, in our hunger for mystery, we're simply learning to listen to the whispers of the earth itself. And in that tension between fact and folklore, the tunnels keep their deepest secret, the power to make us wonder. In the dusty ruins of Iraq's Ubaid period settlements, archaeologists uncovered something that defies conventional explanations: a collection of 7,000-year-old figurines with distinctly reptilian features. These eerie clay statues depict humanoid bodies with elongated heads, almond-shaped eyes, and lizard-like faces, some cradling infants with matching otherworldly traits. Discovered at sites like Eridu and these artifacts predate Mesopotamia's earliest cities, raising a chilling question. Were these mere symbols of spiritual belief, or could they hint at encounters with beings beyond our understanding? The mainstream interpretation leans toward symbolism. Anthropologists note that the Ubaid culture revered animals, often blending human and creature traits in their art to represent shamanic transformation or totemic deities. The lizard, a creature capable of regeneration through shedding its skin, might have symbolized rebirth or fertility, a fitting motif for a society transitioning from hunter-gatherer life to agriculture. Some figurines wear shoulder ornaments resembling coiled snakes, suggesting ties to water deities in this arid region where survival depended on the Euphrates' unpredictable floods. Yet this explanation stumbles when confronted with the figurine's unsettling specificity. Unlike the abstract animal-human hybrids found in other Neolithic art, the Ubaid statuettes display consistent, almost clinical reptilian details, slitted pupils, scaled textures, and postures that feel unnervingly lifelike. This precision fuels alternative theories, most controversially the ancient astronaut hypothesis. Proponents point to the figurine's resemblance to modern descriptions of reptilian aliens, a coincidence that becomes harder to ignore when examining their postures. Several statues stand rigid with their arms at their sides, while others grasp what appear to be tools or instruments, evoking images of visitors conducting rituals or experiments. Even more provocative are the infant-bearing figures, their elongated heads mirroring the grey alien archetype. Could these artifacts be cultural memories of extraterrestrial contact preserved in clay across millennia? Skeptics counter that this projection reflects modern pop culture more than ancient reality, but the mystery deepens when considering the Ubaid culture's sudden advancements. Their irrigation systems, pottery techniques, and social organization emerged with startling sophistication, traits that fringe researchers argue could stem from outside influence. A third, often overlooked theory bridges these extremes. The figurines might represent a lost branch of human spirituality, where reptilian imagery encoded advanced scientific observations. The Ubaid people lived in close contact with nature, and their depictions could reflect early insights into evolutionary biology, lizards as symbols of adaptation in a changing world. Or perhaps they worshipped ancestors who wore ritual masks or headpieces resembling serpents, a practice seen in later Mesopotamian cultures. Without written records, the truth remains coiled in shadows, but one thing is certain: these artifacts challenge our assumptions about humanity's earliest artists. Were they sculpting myths, documenting encounters, or grasping for metaphors to explain a world teeming with mysteries? The Ubaid lizardmen keep their secrets, silent and enigmatic, waiting for us to shed our own preconceptions and see the past with new eyes. The Ubaid figurines aren't the only enigma left behind by this shadowy culture. Their technological innovations are equally baffling. While their reptilian statues capture attention, perhaps their most enduring legacy lies beneath the soil. An intricate network of irrigation canals so advanced they transformed the arid Mesopotamian plains into fertile breadbaskets. These weren't just ditches, they were feats of hydrological engineering with carefully sloped channels, diversion dams, and even primitive siphon systems to control water flow. The precision suggests an understanding of elevation and gradient that shouldn't exist in a society transitioning from nomadic life. How did a people who left no written blueprints master such complex civil engineering? This mastery spills into their urban planning. At Tel El Awali, one of the oldest Ubaid settlements, archaeologists uncovered streets laid out in geometric grids, with standardized brick sizes and communal storage facilities, evidence of a centralized authority coordinating large-scale projects. Their homes featured raised foundations to avoid flooding, and some even had indoor drainage channels, a luxury not seen again until Roman times. What's striking isn't just their sophistication, but the abruptness of their development. Unlike the slow evolution of most Neolithic societies, the Ubaid culture's advancements appear almost premeditated. Could their lizard-headed figurines represent more than myth? Some researchers speculate they symbolize a priestly class who wore ceremonial masks, directing these projects with knowledge that seemed otherworldly to common laborers. Then there's the mystery of their social structure. Burials reveal minimal wealth disparity, no grand tombs for elites, yet clear evidence of specialized labor like potters, metallurgists, and surveyors. This egalitarian yet highly organized system defies the typical trajectory of early civilizations, which usually show stark hierarchies. One theory suggests the Ubaid people operated as a proto-cooperative, their shared water management system fostering collective responsibility rather than autocratic rule. But here's the twist: despite their communal ethos, their artifacts spread across Mesopotamia like a cultural wildfire, influencing later Sumerian religion and architecture. The Ubaid didn't conquer, they permeated. Their legacy lingers in the ziggurats of whose terraced designs echo the Ubaid stepped platforms, possibly the original stairways to heaven for those reptilian-faced deities. The most provocative clue lies in their sudden disappearance. Around 3800 BCE, Ubaid settlements show signs of abrupt abandonment, not from invasion or drought, but what appears to be a deliberate exodus. Some sites reveal carefully sealed doors and ritually buried artifacts as if expecting to return. Were they fleeing ecological collapse or following some ordained migration? Their descendants, the Sumerians, would later write of the Abgalu, wise amphibious sages who emerged from the Persian Gulf to teach civilization. Could this be a distorted memory of the Ubaid? Between their engineered landscapes, enigmatic icons, and vanishing act, this culture feels less like a stepping stone to history and more like a fleeting glimpse of something far stranger, a society that grasped secrets we're still piecing together millennia later. Their canals still whisper under Iraq's farmlands, their figurines stare with unblinking alien eyes, and their greatest lesson might be this: progress doesn't always leave explanations. Sometimes it just leaves traces, and the heavier the trace, the deeper the mystery. From the Antikythera Mechanism's celestial precision to the U-Bayed lizardmen's eerie gaze, these 50 discoveries don't just defy explanation, they shatter the boundaries of what we thought possible. Each artifact, skeleton, and megalith is a crack in the foundation of history, revealing glimpses of forgotten knowledge, lost civilizations, and technologies that shouldn't exist. How did ancient cultures achieve feats that stump modern engineers? Why do so many of these enigmas cluster around sacred sites or celestial alignments? And most haunting of all, what other game-changing secrets still lie buried beneath deserts, jungles, and ocean floors, waiting to rewrite the textbooks again? This isn't just about rewriting timelines, it's about humility. Every time science dismisses an anomaly as impossible, another discovery emerges to prove we've underestimated our ancestors. The Baghdad Batteries and Dendera light carvings hint at ancient electricity. The Longyou cave's acoustic mastery suggests lost engineering prowess. Even the Voynich Manuscript, with its unreadable script, reminds us that entire languages and the worlds they described can vanish without a trace. These aren't outliers, they're breadcrumbs leading us toward a startling truth. Human history is far stranger, far richer, and far more mysterious than we've been taught. So what's your favorite enigma? The Nazca Line's celestial blueprints, Gobekli Tepe's star-carved pillars, or something we didn't cover today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the most thrilling part of archaeology isn't the answers we've found, but the questions we're still asking. And if you're hungry for more mind-bending mysteries, hit subscribe. The past isn't done surprising us yet, and neither are we. Until next time, keep digging, because history's greatest secrets are always one discovery away from coming.